Where did Donnie Thornberry come from? In the entire history of Nicktoons, possibly even cartoons as a whole, I don't think there's ever been a more captivating origin story. Sure, CatDog is up there, definitely, but the thing is, you could watch nearly any episode of that show, heck, even a marathon, and it might take you at least a little while to start questioning their existence and their entire origin. Meanwhile, the Wild Thornberrys, on the other hand, because the show was so steeped in real-world logic, despite the talking animals, the audience couldn't help but take one look at Donnie, hear him speak for even just a moment, and immediately question where he came from and how he got here. For years, the intro theme to the show would pour fuel on that fire as well, considering all it would really tell us was that they found him. That was it. Story after story, season after season, all we ever knew was that they found Donnie and that he was now a part of their family. We don't even know if they really went through a formal adoption process or if they notified anybody that they full-blown found a child out in the wild. Heck, we don't even know where they found him. For 3 entire seasons of this show, over 4 years, we had just accepted what we were told about Donnie and never really had the opportunity to explore the topic any further. However, come season 4, that would all change with a TV movie that would answer a long list of questions and finally give us a deep understanding of how Donnie came to be a Thornberry. At the end of the day, though, that 4-part special didn't just give us further understanding of Donnie's past, it gave us a clear blueprint of what shaped Donnie's psyche and paved the path for him to become the person that he is today. And when we truly consider that additional context, it changes everything that you thought you knew about Donnie Thornberry. It shows us that he isn't just some feral boy in leopard print shorts. He's a metaphor for an endless amount of much deeper questions. Questions that at their core really highlight some truly overlooked facets of the human condition. Ones that are almost primal in nature. In a sense, kind of looking at life in a way that our ancestors once did. What happens when you raise a child like an animal in nature? What kind of effect does it have on them in the long run? And do they process emotion, thought, and trauma like the rest of their age group does? The ones that are part of a modern society? Today, on our nostalgic walk down memory lane, we're truly going deeper than nostalgia. Because those questions really are just the tip of the iceberg. The origin of Donnie answered a lot of what everyone was thinking. However, when we look past those simple answers and analyze the implications of Donnie's past and how that past affects everything that this family has been through, it would leave us with more questions than you could ever imagine. It would show us that Donnie's story was a lot darker than any of us could have ever thought. And most of all, it would shine a really human light on Donnie. One that a lot of us fail to shine on him due to the fact that he's so unique in comparison to your average human. Now, I'll be honest and say that when I was a kid, I never really thought too much about Donnie. Other than the general surface level curiosity about where he came from, I just saw him as the weird little dude who was babbling all the time. I didn't really question it or why he acted the way that he did. I never stopped to consider why he wasn't learning words that the rest of the family was saying to him, even though he clearly grasps concepts and is actually pretty smart. In revisiting this show, and particularly this story, however, the gravity of it all hit me very differently. And the waves that it made throughout the rest of this series were absolutely catastrophic. Before we get into the meat and potatoes though, I just want to say thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for clicking on this video. I genuinely put a lot into this one. I crammed a lot of late nights and early mornings making this video happen in the timeline that it did. It's a really heavy one, and I'm so satisfied with how it turned out. If you like it, it would really mean a lot to me if you would drop a like and consider subscribing if you haven't already. Of course, if you want to show even further support to my creative endeavors, please consider a YouTube membership. It's an excellent way to show support, and it truly helps me a ton. Also, I know I put a disclaimer in the beginning of every video, but I figured I'd throw it out here too, because why not? If you want to watch the actual Wild Thornberrys uninterrupted without my editing and narration over the episode, you can find it on Paramount Plus, or even better, buy the whole series on DVD. That way, it'll pretty much last forever and you'll have it even if it disappears from streaming. Again, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you, my friend, and I hope that you have an amazing day. Now, the origin of Donnie starts out in Malaysia, specifically the island of Borneo, which is the third largest island in the world, as we see a young Nigel Thornberry rocking an absolutely magnificent beard while making a documentary about the orangutans that call the island home.
While my Malay is a bit rusty, I can tell you orang means man, and utan means forest or jungle. They are gentle creatures, especially the mothers, who tenderly wash their babies with rainwater and use their own teeth to comb the baby's hair.
Oh my gosh, Nigel!
Great goodall! That would seem to be a boy of the jungle.
Yeah, Donnie, that was you.
Eliza brings Donnie back over to the table where they're all doing some painting, and she explains how amazed she is that Donnie seems to remember the day that they found him. Debbie, though, isn't all too surprised, saying that she remembers it like it was yesterday because he threw her favorite CDs in the garbage disposal. At that, he starts painting on her shirt and she gets extremely angry. However, Eliza calms her down, saying that Donnie's just really excited because he probably knows that today is his birthday.
Well, not exactly his birthday since we don't know his birthday, but it is the day we found him, so...
Ugh, whatever!
Donnie, look what you did to the proboscis monkey's nose!
Chill, Eliza. He just got more energy than usual because he's... Hello, Donnie.
As time passes, the family gets their camp established, and Maryanne ends up tasking Debbie and Eliza with setting up Donnie's birthday party while they make their way to the foster parent agency with him. Nigel ends up hyping up how great the surprise party is going to be, leaving Maryanne kind of confused.
No, dearest, the surprise is for you, but I can't tell you yet. Oh, all right, you've dragged it out of me. Maryanne, I've invited your mother to join us for the festivities.
My mother?
Surprise!
Oh no.
My mother?
My mother!
Maryanne begins to panic as she has a rather troublesome relationship with her mother, who openly tells her that she isn't raising her children right and that they deserve stability, not this wild life on the road. Things start to slip apart as she stresses about how the convy is a mess and that they already have way too much going on to factor in a visit from her mother, who's gonna be there in just a few hours. At that, she immediately tasks the girls with pivoting their directive to cleaning the entire convy instead of preparing for the party. Nigel grabs Donnie, who drops the picture that he painted, as the two head off with Maryanne. We fast forward to them having arrived in a village at the local foster care office.
I'm afraid on our end we still haven't been able to get to the bottom of this. We just don't know who Donnie's real parents are, or if they're even alive.
Well, I guess Donnie's mysterious past will remain just that. Mysterious.
I have to admit, Mr. Mayasandra, from the moment we found him, we felt like he belonged in our family.
Mr. Mayasandra tells them that Donnie certainly is a happy and healthy kid and that he sees no reason at all why the Thornberrys can't keep being his foster parents. Of course, the two are overjoyed by this good news, but really quick, I have to point out how interesting it is that this moment right here alone, so early on, really did retroactively fill in a lot of blanks for us. This moment gave us confirmation that Donnie is a part of the system, so to speak. Up until this point, we've been kind of operating on the assumption that they just kind of found him in the rainforest and that was it. We didn't know the details further than that, or if there was any attempt made to reunite him with his biological parents. This interaction with Mr. Mayasandra, though, kind of felt like it was a routine check-in that they've been through previously. It came across as him kind of acting as a caseworker for Donnie, trying to track down his parents and get to the bottom of his existence, as well as how he ended up in the rainforest. By all means, I guess this doesn't really change much in the long run, and it only serves to kind of satiate our own curiosity as viewers. But with that being said, I find it to be an excellent thing. They're crossing their T's and dotting their I's in a story sense, and even if it doesn't change the past, it does answer some burning questions. Donnie isn't just the little boy that they found in the rainforest. He's a legitimate foster child to them, actually registered with the local government where they found him. To be honest, I don't think any of us really assumed that they would just take this child and not try to at least tell some sort of official. The Thornberrys don't really seem to be those kind of people. They have proper morals that are pointed in the right direction. However, that entire question came as a result more of unturned stones, so to speak, and it's satisfying to finally have the writers confirm all of this for us. From there, though, we cut back to camp where Nigel and Maryanne are about to go searching for some orangutans to film for a documentary that they're working on, as Maryanne delegates more tasks to the girls. With the conv clean, now they have to set up the party, and Debbie specifically is in charge of wrestling Donnie into some formal clothes before their grandmother arrives. This, of course, certainly proves itself to be a way bigger challenge than anybody could have imagined, as Debbie finds herself being outrun by Donnie, who's climbed a tree and is throwing his socks at her, laughing.
You've got him scared, all right.
Look, you do your job and I'll do mine.
I could handle Donnie way better than you.
He is all yours. I'd rather clean the conv anyway. It isn't moving.
I'll even take him out of your sight. Am I good or what? Not only do I get Debbie to do the cleaning, I get to go look for orangutans. Donnie, if you get dressed, you can go in the rainforest with us.
As Eliza, Darwin, and Donnie go off adventuring, leaving Debbie to clean, we cut over to Nigel and Maryanne at an orangutan sanctuary, learning about the effects that poachers have had on them. The woman who runs the sanctuary explains that poachers will often kill the mother orangutan to take her baby and to sell it to someone as a pet. Then, when that person's pet orangutan starts to get big and less cute in their eyes, they end up abandoning it, leaving the domesticated and kidnapped creature helpless. This sanctuary specializes in finding the abandoned orangutans, rehabilitating them, and teaching them how to survive in the rainforest on their own, considering that they've essentially had their instincts robbed from them.
Those poor babies. This poaching seems to be reaching crisis level.
It's awful, and I can't believe the Foundation doesn't realize how difficult it's going to be for us to find one in the wild.
Difficult, but not impossible, Maryanne.
And if we don't film an orangutan in the wild, they want to cut our funding.
With the looming threat of the Foundation in mind, Nigel asks the woman if she might be able to point them in the direction of an orangutan out in its natural habitat. She tells them that they let a young male free after a successful rehabilitation just a few days ago, and that he couldn't have gone too far by this point. But sadly, they've also been told this morning that some poachers have been spotted in the area. Elsewhere in the rainforest, Eliza, Darwin, and Donnie are out exploring when they come upon a durian tree, which, if you aren't familiar with, is a fruit that has a very gnarly smell, but it's actually surprisingly tasty. It makes for a pretty solid vegan meat substitute if you're into that sort of thing. It kind of shreds like a pulled pork kind of texture. Donnie is absolutely stoked as he grabs one, rips it open, and starts digging in. Eliza connects the dots relatively quickly, realizing that he likely remembers eating them with the orangutans when he used to live here with them. At that, she comes to the conclusion that Donnie might actually be able to lead them to some orangutans himself, considering that this was once his home. She starts mimicking the behavior of an orangutan in hopes of jogging his memory a bit, and when he sees her, he immediately reacts.
Your impression of an orangutan was worse than I thought.
Oh no!
Eliza and the gang end up escaping up a tree as the rhinoceros rams the tree repeatedly. When Eliza asks why he's attacking them, we learn that he actually has a grudge against humans because the last time they were here, they murdered one of his family members and took the horn of another. Eventually though, after he runs out of steam, he ends up walking away, leaving Eliza, Darwin, and Donnie safe at last. Back at the convy though, we see Debbie still cleaning as she has her headphones just blasting right into her ears. She stands there scrubbing the front of the convy as her grandmother is dropped off nearby in a jeep. Conveniently though, she can't see Debbie in front of the massive vehicle, and as she walks around, Debbie unknowingly turns the corner just in time to evade her sight, leaving Maryanne's mother thinking that she's the only one there because she arrived 3 hours early. At that, she calls her husband and starts talking to him as she helps herself into their home, taking it upon herself to clean it as she sees it being in unfit conditions. While that's happening, Eliza stumbles upon some monkeys, and her and Donnie end up joining them for a swim. As they all play together, she says that they're hoping to see some orangutans, but the monkeys tell her that they used to see them all the time. However, they don't really see orangutans at all anymore. As they all continue swimming and having fun together though, we learn that somebody is watching over them secretly from afar. Elsewhere, Nigel and Maryanne are just delighted to have stumbled upon an orangutan using a leaf as a cup to drink from the river down below. They start descending the cliffside that they're on, hoping to get a closer camera angle, but on the way down, Nigel's backpack ends up opening and their radio falls out, descending to the trees down below.
My mother is coming. We've got an impossible deadline. The radio is ruined. My mother is coming.
Hey, didn't I just... Oh, hey! Who? Grandma?
Debbie?
Her grandma tells her that she's been here for a few hours now, surprised that they miraculously haven't ran into each other yet, and at that, she takes Debbie to go wash up. After a while, we see her brushing Debbie's hair, telling her about how she gets it from her side of the family, but at the same time delivering a backhanded compliment in saying that it's a shame that Debbie hides her face behind it.
Hiding half your pretty face just isn't in style anymore.
Huh?
In fact, I brought you a little present. It's the hot new thing with the in crowd.
No, really, Grandma. That's okay.
Ta-da!
Gee, thanks, Grandma. I guess I didn't come in black, huh?
Across the rainforest, Nigel and Maryanne are still rappelling down the cliffside when Maryanne's anchor ends up coming detached, sending her flying down below. Thankfully though, as she falls, the rope ends up catching on a jagged crag and saving her from plummeting further. On the downside, however, Maryanne is left shaken up and with a broken wrist. Nigel insists that they go back and seek some medical attention right away, but she refuses, saying that it's just a sprain and that they absolutely cannot miss getting this footage. And at that, they press on. Meanwhile, in Eliza's world, her pursuit of meeting an orangutan is derailed again and again, all at the hands of Donnie. At first, it's in the form of him scaring off what she believes is an orangutan in the brush in his excitement to show her a porcupine that he found. But not too long after that, he ends up luring a crocodile to the rest of the group, leaving them all terrified, save for Donnie, who's just as excited as can be. Thinking on her feet though, Eliza picks up a stick and tosses it into the river, telling the crocodile that it's a snake, which causes him to go chasing after it. Thankfully, everybody is safe. However, Eliza is just through the roof pissed off at Donnie as she begins to yell at him and tell him that he's been ruining their fun all day with his antics.
Donnie, stop fooling around. You nearly got all the monkeys eaten. You've been messing up our fun all day. You have wrecked everything. From now on, you can stay home because I am never, ever taking you in the jungle again.
Eliza turns around and says goodbye to the monkeys, shortly after realizing that she was really mean to Donnie. She ends up turning around to apologize for her actions, but when he's nowhere to be found, Eliza feels absolutely horrible and worried about where he could have possibly gone. Of course, she goes off looking for him, while back at camp, Debbie is trying to radio her parents, but getting absolutely no response. Her grandma begins to worry about them, considering everybody should have been back here by now, but Debbie tries to put her mind at ease, saying that Eliza always takes forever and that her parents probably just turned their radio off while filming. Back in the depths of the rainforest, though...
Where is he?
Well, he can't have gone too far.
This is all my fault. I only told Debbie I could take care of him as an excuse to go looking for orangutans.
Oh, we're bound to run into something that's seen him. I mean, how many little boys wearing socks and shoes could there be in the rainforest anyway?
But what if we don't find him? He's all alone in the rainforest.
Eliza starts overflowing with regret, saying that she shouldn't have said what she said because she didn't mean it. And at the thought of Donnie having to survive alone in the jungle yet again, she begins to cry. Elsewhere though, we see Donnie running around and just having the time of his life. He strips off his shoes and socks, climbing in the trees without a care in the world, feeling like he's at home again. As he runs around the rainforest floor, far off, Eliza and Darwin are wandering, hoping to find him so that she can apologize. Darwin suggests that they go back to camp to get some help and maybe a snack, but she stubbornly denies, saying that they're gonna find him themselves.
Something tells me Donnie knows this rainforest better than we do. He is the one who lived here.
That was 2 years ago. There's no way he could...
What is it? Whatever it is, it eats chimpanzees, doesn't it?
It's one of Donnie's socks. That means he's been here. And I bet he's up there. Come on.
He's here, he's there, he's everywhere, except where I want to be, at the convy.
Speaking of the convy, Debbie and her grandma sit there, awkwardly awaiting the arrival of everyone else, not really saying much to each other. All of a sudden, Grandma Sophie goes digging through her purse and finds the caulking gun that she packed with her, saying that she's gonna put some frosting on his cake to show Donnie what a real birthday is all about.
Could someone explain to me why we're celebrating a birthday for a boy we found in the jungle? For all we know, he could have been hatched.
A birthday is a birthday, Debbie. Now, beat this butter and sugar. What's this?
Donnie's latest masterpiece.
As Eliza and Darwin climb up the tree that they found a sock on in hopes of finding Donnie, they ultimately come up short. However, while they're up there, Eliza ends up overhearing some birds above talking about a little boy that was shoving some larva up his nose. Knowing good and well that sounds like some Donnie shenanigans, she climbs down the tree in hopes of heading towards the direction that the birds came from. On the way though, she stumbles upon a bear sleeping in the tree, causing it to angrily wake up and chase them upward. It chases Eliza and Darwin out to a very thin branch as they both cower in fear.
Please don't hurt us. We didn't want to...
Hey, how come you talk like me? You a sun bear too?
No, I'm a girl. A girl who can talk to animals.
Come closer so I can see for myself.
Eliza, he'll rip you to shreds with those claws.
What's that? Another girl?
I beg your pardon?
Oh, that's Darwin, a chimpanzee. You mean you really can't see us?
I can only see things right in front of my face.
Eliza climbs down and talks to the bear about how she has trouble seeing too, explaining that's why she wears glasses to help her see. The bear apologizes for chasing them, saying that he was just trying to protect himself and that you can't be too safe out here. From there, Eliza ends up asking if the bear has seen a little boy around here, and he says that he has, and that she should probably hurry up and find him before he makes any more enemies out here on his own. At that, the sun bear allows them to pass as long as they don't step on him this time. As they continue their pursuit, we see Nigel and Maryanne still struggling with Maryanne's broken wrist. They're trying to find the orangutan that they were following before, but unfortunately, they keep coming up short. That is, until they spy a durian fruit rind at their feet, realizing that the orangutan is directly above them. He ends up swinging downstream up in the trees as Maryanne decides to break out their inflatable raft so that they can get some up-close footage of him. Off in the distance, though, we see Donnie running through the rainforest, making friends with a dragonfly, when all of a sudden, he's tackled by a young orangutan. The two playfully wrestle around for a few until they end up sharing the hand signal that Donnie did previously, as well as a brief hug, and next thing you know, the young orangutan is guiding Donnie somewhere. As the two swing on vines through the jungle, we cut back to the convy where Debbie and her grandma are finishing up their cake and growing more and more concerned that nobody's come back yet.
We better go look for them.
Grandma, we're in the middle of the rainforest. Hello. Just how are we gonna find them?
You forget what a wilderness girl your old grandma has become. Now get your things.
You don't understand. I don't miss Donnie. Last week, Donnie made me breakfast in bed by pouring cereal and milk on my pillow.
Regardless of her frustrations, the two head out. Across the rainforest, Eliza and Darwin are walking around looking for Donnie still, as Darwin complains about the same exact cereal incident that Debbie was just talking about, saying that Donnie belongs in the rainforest because he isn't civilized like the rest of them. Naturally, Eliza shuns him, saying that Donnie is a part of their family.
So is Debbie. Does that mean we want her to stay forever too?
Why can't we find him?
Is it possible Donnie doesn't want to be found?
Donnie! Donnie, it's us!
Eliza, he does seem happy.
Maybe you're right, Darwin.
Call it a chimp's sixth sense, bud.
Eliza and Darwin stand by watching while the orangutans grab Donnie and climb up to the trees with him. They end up giving chase, and just like that, we cut back to Nigel and Maryanne, who are still chasing their orangutan, hoping to get some footage. Sadly for Maryanne and her broken wrist, however, they end up coming upon some rapids and waterfalls. Things get so choppy that Nigel even ends up losing the tape of footage from the orangutan sanctuary. He reaches out of the raft, trying to grab it, and he ends up going overboard, leaving Maryanne trying to control their raft down the rapids with only one working arm. The river even ends up splitting in two, but luckily, not that long after, the two parts meet back up with one another, and Maryanne is able to get to Nigel as he climbs on a rock and jumps back into the raft. In the process, though, he unfortunately ends up hurting his ankle. As he suggests that they make shelter for the evening and head back home in the morning, we cut back to Eliza, who is still on the hunt for Donnie. She ends up being approached by this woman in the bushes, leaving her kind of shaken.
What are you doing here?
You are looking for a little boy.
How did you know that?
I can tell you where he's going, but you might not like the truth. He's returning home to his family.
His family? You mean Donnie's parents? No, Donnie's parents can't still be alive. You're lying. It's not true.
Child, please.
Eliza argues with the woman, refusing to listen to her as she's clearly trying to tell Eliza something important about Donnie's family. Eliza admits that she's scared that this woman might actually be telling the truth, but by the time she finds clarity in hopes of hearing the woman out, she's nowhere to be found. Just then, though, Eliza hears some crying in some nearby bushes.
Darwin, look! A baby orangutan! It's okay. We won't hurt you.
I can't find my mama.
I know you're enamored with orangutans, but if we don't get going, we'll never find Donnie.
I know, but I can't just leave her here. If I help her find her mother, maybe her mother will know the orangutan who took Donnie.
The baby orangutan ends up directing Eliza to where she slept last night so that they can start their search there. Not too far away though, we see none other than Donnie climbing around with the orangutans and making friends with them. Unknown to him though, directly below the part of the canopy that he's in is none other than Debbie and Grandma Sophie.
You're sure they're headed in this direction?
This is the way Eliza, Darwin, and Donnie. Ow!
Stupid bamboo! Well, we must be catching up.
My life is so not fun right now.
As the sun begins to set, we see Eliza and Darwin climbing the tree that the baby orangutan slept in, hoping to find its mother. When she's nowhere to be found, though, they begin to worry about what may have happened to her. As lightning strikes nearby, though, they all decide that it's best for them to just take shelter in the orangutan nest overnight. As they all get comfy, we see Nigel and Maryanne about to do the same as they make their way into a dark cave, deciding to call that their home for the evening.
I just wish we had a radio so we could check and see if my mother survived her trip, and if the girls are surviving my mother.
Don't worry, lovely. They're all safe and sound at the convy. Ow!
Ikut sama saya, kita. Ikut sama saya. Ikut sama saya, kita.
Isn't this exciting?
Debbie starts to panic, questioning the intention of all this as she realizes that they're being carried towards a massive fire, thinking that they're gonna be served for dinner. While they face that though, we cut back over to Eliza, who's putting the baby orangutan to bed and worrying profusely about Donnie and the possibility of having to give him back to his real parents.
What if we have to give you back to your mother?
Hours pass and we see Debbie and her grandmother back at the village. Debbie's guard is still sky high, thinking that they're going to be served for dinner, even though the locals are inviting them to dance around the fire and enjoy themselves. Eventually though, as time passes and the celebration continues, Debbie ends up separated from her grandmother, causing her panic to escalate even further, worrying for her safety. Back in Eliza's world though, as she sleeps through the night with Darwin and the baby orangutan, lightning strikes nearby, causing a tree branch to catch on fire, which rapidly begins spreading as they're sleeping through the entire ordeal. Not too far off in the distance though, a sleeping Donnie wakes up to the smell of smoke and he begins to investigate, shocked to see a raging forest fire in the works. An animal runs by in a panic, taking Donnie's attention from the fire and causing him to chase it with glee, Along the way, though, he stumbles upon Eliza's picture of their family that she dropped from the nest above. Donnie scales the tree and makes his way towards the nest where he sees Eliza sleeping. However, before he can wake her up, the orangutan from before swings by, grabbing him and taking him away. By this point, Eliza is half awake and she thinks that this could have been a dream. But regardless, she wakes up Darwin saying that they need to go find Donnie. In the whole process, the baby orangutan that she's watching over wakes up abruptly from the smell of smoke nearby.
Fire! Ah! Come on, we have to put this out before it spreads!
It's a fire!
Oh, my mama! Don't worry, we'll find her soon.
They all race out of the tree and begin flinging mud at the fire in hopes of maybe snuffing out the flames, but sadly, it's no use. They don't even really make a dent in the rapidly growing forest fire. Ultimately, Eliza decides that they're all gonna head off towards the river because they should at least be slightly safer from the fire there. As they head off in that direction, we cut back over to Nigel and Maryanne, who are startled awake in the middle of the night by an unrecognizable sound.
I believe that was a male orangutan. If I'm not mistaken, he's sounding his call to claim his territory, or perhaps calling to a female friend. Or he could be warning other males to stay away.
They take this as their perfect opportunity to go get their footage to secure their funding and not lose their entire livelihood. So, just like that, the two injured Thornberrys attempt to head out into the night, but sadly, they're not able to remember the path that they took into this cave in the first place, and conveniently, their flashlight starts to flicker a little bit right at that exact moment, leaving them worried. As all of this is unfolding, we cut back to Debbie and her grandma at the village celebration. Feeling inspired by one of the women's beautiful crowns, Grandma Sophie decides to go collect some flowers and leaves to weave one for herself. When she tries to make her way back into the celebration, though, she's denied entry by the men manning the gate. Of course, this naturally has Debbie panicking even more, fearing that she's going to be separated from her grandma.
Oh. Ooh, I love charades. Let's see. Pterodactyl?
Oh, Grandma, this is no time for games. Besides, I think he means a ghost. Uh-oh. Ghost. Bad? You? I think they're gonna cook you first.
No, they're not.
They're gonna cook me first?
At that, Grandma Sophie begins connecting the dots, recalling that she's actually read about this before. She explains that this is likely a ritual to get rid of evil spirits and that they don't want her re-entering because they don't want her bringing any negative spirits back with her. All that goes out the window, however, when everyone realizes that there's a massive fire destroying part of the rainforest. A villager gives Debbie and her grandma each a bowl for water to help put out the fire, and just like that, the party is abandoned as everyone goes to fight the fire as a community. Back in the depths of the jungle, though, Eliza is running with Darwin, the baby orangutan, and a ton of other animals trying to reach safety.
Have any of you seen a little boy? A human urchin? Rows of teeth, unruly hair? Yes, that's him. That one is yours. That wretched boy started this fire. What? Donnie started this?
Eliza refuses to believe it, saying that Donnie may be rambunctious, but he'd never start a forest fire. However, the badger says that it saw Donnie standing there hitting a stick at the first bush that caught fire. At that, it refuses to believe Eliza, saying that she's probably going to lead them to danger just like Donnie did.
Do you know who you're talking to? Say what you want about Donnie, but this girl wouldn't hurt a flea.
Please, listen to me. What should we do? Don't follow her. Follow me. Come this way.
As Eliza is fighting that battle, her parents are still struggling in the cave. As they traverse through the depths, hanging on to the last bit of life in their flashlight, hundreds of birds begin flying above head, with one even landing in Maryanne's hair. Nigel immediately recognizes this species though, saying that they make their nests in deep cave walls. Considering that they're flying into the cave, he has the brilliant idea to walk in the opposite direction that they're going so that they can find the entrance. As they make their way down the cave though, we cut back over to Eliza, who's still begging all of the animals to listen to her and follow her. However, they are all confident in their instincts and doubting that the smoke is confusing them. Right at the perfect time though, Eliza's new monkey friends from earlier drop down from above.
What's going on? Our hairy teethy boy started the fire!
And now she's trying to keep us from reaching the river. But not for long.
Hold on, hogs. Now look, the hairy teethy boy doesn't get my vote for the best rainforest guest either. But he didn't start this fire. A bolt of lightning did. Saw it myself.
I knew it! Now will you follow me to the river? We'll trust you for now.
The monkeys head further into the jungle to find the rest of their family and hopefully get them to safety, promising Eliza that they'll send Donnie towards the river if they see him. As Eliza begins guiding the rest of the animals to the river, we cut back over to the village where Debbie and her grandma are trying to help put the fire out. At one point though, her grandma takes a moment to ask some of the locals if they've seen Eliza as she pulls out a picture of her. Sadly, the person she's asking has no idea what she's talking about. However, when she pulls out a picture of Nigel, Maryanne, and Donnie, she gets a response that she could have never expected.
Oh! You've seen Donald?
You saw Donnie when he was a baby?
Oh.
He's saying he saw Donnie's parents.
Oh my goodness, they're alive?
Huh.
Okay, I give up.
Debbie says that he's trying to tell her that his parents live in another village in the rainforest, and at that, they both marvel at the idea of Donnie's parents being out there somewhere all this time. Just like that, we cut back to Donnie, who's with the orangutans, far away from the fire, staying safe up in a tree. All of a sudden though, he notices a village off in the distance, and he gets super excited, doing the same exact hand gesture from earlier. The orangutan sees his excitement and picks him up, presumably heading towards that village carrying him. While they head that way, we see Nigel and Maryanne having finally made it out of the cave, and much to their excitement, they've stumbled upon that same male orangutan from earlier outside. When they finally get in a position to record him though, they end up seeing one of the most shocking things that they've ever witnessed.
Oh no, poachers! Oh, and the camera's jammed again.
You! Get away from that orangutan! And you'll keep running if you know what's good for you!
Nigel, be careful. Those men could be dangerous. Oh, Nigel, are you all right?
With the poachers chased off, the orangutan is able to escape the net and get out of here. Nigel and Maryanne, however, are delighted to stumble upon a radio as they found themselves right in the poachers' camp. Maryanne picks up the radio and she calls for Debbie, getting a hold of her immediately.
Yes, dear, we're okay. Relatively. Did your grandmother arrive?
Grandma Sophie's fine, and we're gonna go look for Eliza, Donnie, and Darwin.
Look for them? You mean they're lost?
Oh, and we have to find Donnie's real parents, too, right after we help the village put out the fire. So, and...
Debbie? Debbie? Oh, I can't get her back.
Did she say Donnie's real parents?
I think so. And she also said... fire.
As Nigel and Maryanne stare in awe at the massive plume of smoke in the distance, we cut back to Eliza guiding the animals as they finally arrive at the river, thankful to cross over to safety. They even apologize to Eliza for assuming the worst of her before they make their retreat. Eliza, on the other hand, has to stay behind to help the baby orangutan find her mother. She ends up doing her best male orangutan call in hopes of drawing in the mother orangutan if she can. Meanwhile, back at the village, Debbie and her grandmother are asking for directions to the village that Donnie's parents are from.
One last guess. The hokey pokey?
I was going with ladder, which makes about as much sense. I mean, what would a ladder be doing in the rainforest?
Over in Eliza's neck of the jungle, after doing the orangutan call over and over again, the mother orangutan ends up hearing it and coming down from above, happy as can be that she's been reunited with her baby. They end up asking her if she's seen a little jungle boy around, and she says that she recalls seeing one with fuzzy hair and lots of teeth living in the jungle before her baby was born.
Donnie has lots of hair and teeth. Did he have parents?
Yes, 2 mates. You remind me of them. They helped orangutans too.
Do you know where they are?
The last time I saw them, they lived in a village not far away, near the pig path.
Donnie is going home. Oh, Eliza.
Eliza struggles with the idea of having to give Donnie back to his real parents, but she ends up coming to terms with it, realizing that it's the right thing to do for him and his family if they are still around. Just like that, she and Darwin are off into the fire, and it isn't too long before they're stumbling upon the same exact tree that Donnie had just climbed up moments before. As luck would have it, both her parents and Debbie and Grandma Sophie just so happen to have stumbled upon the same exact tree at the same time, as the family is finally reunited after spending nearly the last 24 hours separated in the rainforest.
Donnie ran away because I yelled at him, and I've been trying to find him, and this woman in the rainforest told me that he was going home.
To his real family.
But if he does have a real family, that means we may have to give him up.
If we have to cross that bridge, we'll do it together. But first, let's find our Donnie together.
At that exact moment, they hear Donnie nearby, and they find him cornered by the fire. Before they can get to him, though, the orangutan swings by on a vine and grabs him, taking him away and leaving the family devastated. Eliza sits on her knees crying her eyes out, and before you know it, rain starts pouring from the sky above, dousing the fire and bringing the jungle to a calm. The family takes some time to regain themselves and let Nigel get his bearings before he begins guiding them toward the spot where he believes they found Donnie years ago. With Maryanne patched up and everybody ready, the family departs.
Darwin? Darwin, what's wrong?
It's Donnie. I know I've been saying all along what a pest he is, but I don't want him to stay in Borneo. I want him in the convy, putting worms up his nose and smashing rotten eggs in my fur and doing all those disgusting things he was born to do.
Eliza talks Darwin down, saying that she wants him to stay too, but if his parents really are alive still, they don't have a choice other than to do the right thing. The family heads off through the rainforest as the entire forest floor begins to turn to mud, causing Debbie to slip and fall as the rest of the family is anxiously looking for Donnie. As Eliza speedwalks ahead with Darwin, she looks down and quickly notices that the entire ground is moving with her. She looks back up to the rest of the family to see a massive mudslide coming down from above, leaving them all defenseless in its wake. Their only option is to hang on to some trees while they wait for the worst of it to pass. When everything eventually calms down, the family comes back together to hopefully regain their footing.
Oh, Mom. Maryanne, watch your wrist.
It's okay. You're worth it.
Look!
Listen! That's Donnie! Come on!
Down in the village, we see Donnie arriving with the orangutan who's keeping watch over him. He's surprised, however, to find the village seemingly barren and lifeless. He looks around, calling out, and moments later, tons of people start emerging from the huts nearby, all shocked and excited to see him. A while after that, the rain has stopped as we see Eliza and her family arriving at the village, calling for Donnie. The villagers all stand around, looking confused, but moments later, we hear the sound of Donnie excitedly babbling as he runs up, happy to see his family. He runs a few laps around them before bringing them back to meet the orangutan with the scar on its face that's been caring for him this entire time. Nigel and Maryanne are completely shocked to see this mother and her son so closely as Donnie grabs her hand and brings her over, having her hold hands with Nigel and Maryanne. All of a sudden though, Eliza is floored when she sees Donnie run up and hug the same exact woman that she saw in the rainforest earlier, thinking that she's actually his mother. However, she's really quick to shoot that idea down.
Please, listen to me. You are wrong. I am not the boy's mother.
Then, well, who are you?
I am Juanice, the medicine woman for this village, and a friend of the boy's parents.
These are Donnie's parents?
Eliza asks if Donnie's parents are still here, but Juanice is sad to say that they aren't, inviting the family to take a seat around the fire so that she can tell them their story. As the flames burn, we get a flashback to Donnie's infancy, being cared for by his mother and father. The three were friends of the rainforest and loved everyone and everything in it. They were close friends to her people, and they were welcomed and accepted in their village. Everyone particularly had a deep love for Donnie, who, from his earliest days, had a deep curiosity for every creature in the rainforest, completely fearless in his love for all of its animals.
They spent much time with one orangutan mother and her baby. A playful male, much like their own little boy. They even taught the youngsters at the same time, as if they were all one family.
The mother orangutan loved Donnie and his parents as if they were her own family, and they shared that love for her and her baby in return. But one tragic night, all of that would change. As the baby orangutan slept in his nest through the night, two poachers would climb up his tree in an attempt to abduct him. Before they could get their hands on him though, the mother orangutan swings by and saves her baby from their clutches. In the process though, she ends up knocked out of the tree and cornered by the two men, each armed with weapons.
But the man and woman who loved the orangutans would not let them. They saved the orangutans from the two wicked men, but lost their lives.
In honor of the man and woman who gave their lives to protect the peaceful beings of this rainforest that they loved so much, the villagers would give them a traditional, ceremonious funeral so that they could all say their goodbyes one last time. With his parents gone now, though, poor young Donnie had the people of the village to care for him. However, instead, he would go in search of the mother orangutan, who he had formed a loving bond with.
And to honor the man and woman who lost their lives, the orangutan mother raised the boy with her own son in gratitude and love. until the moment came when she knew she must give him up to a human family that loved animals.
After Donnie swings right over Nigel and Maryanne as they're recording, leaving them flabbergasted, his orangutan mother pulls him aside, having to make one of the toughest decisions that a mother could ever have to make. She pets Donnie's head with love and shows him the sign for family that his parents taught them, pointing toward the Thornberrys, gesturing for Donnie to go with them as she begins to climb a tree nearby. Donnie stops her, trying to get her to let him hang onto her back so that he can go with her, but she has to tell him no, leaving him behind on the ground and pointing at Nigel, telling Donnie to go with him.
With eyes full of tears, she said goodbye to the boy, knowing these humans would love him just as she and her son had loved him.
At that, the Thornberry family is all moved to their core, coming to the hard realization that not only did Donnie go through the extreme trauma of having his parents murdered, but his orangutan mother picked them of all people, knowing that it was in his best interest. It hits them even harder when Maryanne gets a good look at the picture and she realizes that her and Nigel actually met Donnie's parents in the early days of their travels.
Oh my heavens. Michael and Lisa.
It was on our first trip to Borneo. They were here on their honeymoon.
Primatologists, planning on going to Africa to work with the gorillas.
They must have fallen in love with the orangutans and couldn't leave.
I think we know now, more than ever. We're meant to take care of Donnie.
Just then, Donnie runs up holding the picture that he painted at the beginning of the episode as they were heading to Borneo, and the family is absolutely shocked to finally realize that this isn't just some random painting that he did. This is a picture of his family, because he knew exactly where they were going. He was remembering the family that he left behind here and was excited to see them again, which explains why his energy had been so through the roof this entire time. Donnie sprints right up to his orangutan brother, playing with him, and just so happy to be here with his old family and his new family. Meanwhile, Darwin is moved to tears to know that Donnie is staying with them and continuing to be part of the family. As Eliza walks up to Donnie's orangutan mother, Donnie sprints right past her to give the orangutan a huge hug.
I don't know how to thank you for giving him to us.
It is enough to know he is with the right family. A family that includes a girl who can talk to animals and who helped a lost orangutan baby. The monkeys told me what you did for Lugan. I am glad Donnie is with someone so like his parents.
Eliza's conversation with the orangutan ends up being cut short when Nigel and Maryanne are shocked to see that her son has gotten a hold of the camera and is actually using proper dexterity to hold it and film. As Grandma Sophie pulls out her own camcorder to capture the moment, Eliza gets the brilliant idea to honor Donnie's parents by using the footage that the baby orangutan and her Grandma Sophie caught in the documentary.
Eliza, that's a wonderful idea. Oh, except it's too late. We'd have to uplink it, and the deadline is only an hour away.
I'm afraid your mother's right, Poppet. We'd never make it.
We have to at least try.
I agree.
So do I.
All right, Thornberrys, let's hit the road.
The family sprints through the rainforest as fast as they can, and thanks to Donnie and his knowledge of the area, they make it to the convey with just 1 minute to spare. Maryanne starts delegating tasks to everyone, and despite a minor hiccup dealing with their uplink satellite, they end up getting the footage submitted with not even a single second to spare. With their job saved, we cut to days later where a celebration is underway for Donnie at the Orangutan Sanctuary, with the Thornberrys and the villagers all enjoying each other's company. As everyone mingles with one another, Nigel ends up calling them all to gather around so Eliza can say a few words about why they're all gathered here today.
Ever since we met Donnie, he's been like a part of our family. And after everything we've been through the last few days, we're more sure than ever that he belongs with us. So today, we're making it official by adopting Donnie into the Thornberry family.
Nigel and Maryanne walk hand in hand with Donnie as they lead him to the table where his caseworker is waiting to make his adoption official. Before they proceed, though, he invites them all to take a moment to say some words to their new official son. Maryanne and Nigel try their best, but they're both just so moved by the moment that neither of them can even finish an entire sentence.
What they're trying to say is, of all the jungle boys we could have found...
We're glad we found you.
And the adoption of Donald Michael Thornberry is complete.
To bring the celebration to a close in proper Donnie fashion, he climbs a tree and swings from a vine, belly flopping right into his cake, leaving everyone in stitches. As the episode comes to an end, we see the Thornberrys preparing to depart as Nigel and Maryanne tell Juanice that after the Foundation aired their footage, they got hundreds of calls from people wanting to donate to the Orangutan Sanctuary, which she's just overjoyed to hear, of course. As they're all saying their goodbyes, we cut over to Eliza and Donnie getting to say their goodbyes to Donnie's orangutan family.
We just had to see him one more time.
Marley.
It's a sign. It means
Family. It's sign language for family. But how did...
he learned it from his mother when she taught us.
Family.
Eliza, time to go!
Donnie gives the orangutan one last big hug before wrestling his brother one final time, and just like that, he's off, tackling Debbie and giving her a big hug before the two head onto the convoy, sailing off into the sunset toward their next adventure. Oh man, this one is such a heavy episode to pick apart for so many reasons. It's just absolutely bursting at the seams with emotional weight, and it absolutely comes with an astounding amount of subcontext and parallels that were very easily missed. I do have to say though, in my opinion, this really is one of the best episodes of the series for the simple fact that they were able to spread it across 4 entire time slots and not make it drag on. Like, there was always something happening, so things never really got too dry. If it wasn't some action, it was drama unfolding or a big truth being brought to light. And it all carried this episode very well. Taking it from the top though, I really want to take a quick moment to acknowledge the art style of this show in its entirety. The artists that drew this one did an absolutely phenomenal job of drawing the animals accurately, and the animators especially did an astounding job of accurately capturing the natural movements of these animals. In more of a general sense though, this show is such a special one because it lives in that iconic time where Klasky Csupo animation was dominating Nickelodeon, and I don't mean the all grown up era. I mean the Rugrats, Aw Real Monsters, and Rocket Power era in the 90s. Like, seeing their animation and art style grow up over time was just such a sight to behold. However, the early informative days really were just so fundamental to Nicktoons growing as a network, and I feel like this show was a great example of that. One of the biggest reasons that this one can get to be a bit much to dissect though, aside from the heavy emotional baggage, would be the fact that there were just so many morals to the story. Like, I know good and well that I could probably list as many as I can think of, and you yourself would probably be able to come up with like 10 more on top of that, just because every single plot and side story told comes jam-packed with its own morals and valuable life lessons. Of course, one of the most obvious life lessons that we saw from pretty early on was the importance of being cautious with your words, because they hold power, especially as it pertains to people that care about you. Once you put those words and big feelings out there, you can't really take them back. This was clear as day in the simple fact that it was Eliza's harsh words towards Donnie which caused him to run away in the first place. On top of that, we saw firsthand in Eliza just how hard regret can hit like a ton of bricks when you wrong somebody who's important to you. After she drove Donnie away, she felt absolutely terrible. She realized that she was really demeaning in the way that she spoke down to him. Unfortunately though, she came to that realization too late. By the time she realized what she had done, or even taken his feelings into account, Donnie was long gone. The pain that Eliza had to carry throughout this episode as a result of how she treated her little brother was like the weight of the world bearing down on her shoulders. Furthermore, focusing a little more on Eliza, this one is a big showcase of just how important it is to not assume the worst of situations and to approach interactions with a little more rationality. When it came down to Donnie wandering off in the rainforest, Eliza was fully convinced that he wanted to live here again because she drove him away. She was so worried about what she wanted and how it would affect her that she didn't even stop to take a deep breath and maybe consider that this could be about just a little bit more than how much of a jerk that she is sometimes. Like, imagine how differently this episode would have unfolded if Eliza had actually listened to Juanice the first time that she had approached Eliza in the rainforest moments after Donnie ran away. That would have completely obliterated nearly half of what happened here and completely turned the plot in an entirely different direction. At that point, she was simply trying to warn Eliza that Donnie is likely going through a lot of big feelings and he's returning to where he came from with excitement. Due to her overflowing emotional cup being unmanaged, however, Eliza literally just runs away from this lady instead of hearing her out, assuming that she's saying Donnie's staying in the rainforest. I mean, it straight up took a night alone in the jungle caring for a baby orangutan, an entire forest fire, a mudslide, emotional distress, and Juanice full-blown begging Eliza to just listen to her in order for Eliza to finally let her elevated emotions let go of the wheel for just a moment and allow someone else to do the talking. One other interesting application of the moral when it comes to not assuming the worst of a situation or a person would be Maryanne's mother, Sophie. The entire story arc with her is an excellent metaphor for that entire sentiment. Of course, with all the love in the world, rest in peace Betty White, who absolutely brought life to this character like nobody else could have. She was an amazing actor and an absolute treasure to society. I really feel like the world hasn't been the same since we lost her. As far as Grandma Sophie goes though, this one really brings her character full circle in the sense that from the start of this whole series, she's kind of been Maryanne's mortal enemy. Like, Maryanne always dreads her mom visiting, she always hates when she sends gifts, and she doesn't like interacting with her. All completely valid choices because Grandma Sophie does nothing but judge Maryanne's parenting style and nearly every decision she makes. This episode though, this one finally changes that. After years of her being an absolute menace to Maryanne, this would be the episode where she kind of turns a bit of a new leaf. There wasn't really any part where she talks bad about Maryanne or says that she's a bad mother. She doesn't judge them for the journey that they're on, and as a matter of fact, she's actually happy to be a part of it. She even ends up helping Maryanne and making a splint for her broken wrist using her veterinary knowledge. Of course, there's not really a moment where she offers an apology for how awful of a mother that she's been to Maryanne. However, it was at least nice that this episode was free of any big blow-ups between her and her mother. All that to say though, Maryanne did nothing but make assumptions of her mother, when in all reality she seemed to have come with nothing but good intentions. Sure, she may have arrived and immediately started cleaning, which does send a bit of a mixed message of feeling like the house isn't up to standard. However, there didn't have to be a big clash about it or anything like there usually is. I will admit though, sure, Maryanne's assumptions about her mom and the drama that she was going to cause were incorrect, but even then, Nigel's complete disregard for her feelings was just a little bit frustrating. I mean, he knows good and well that Maryanne is uncomfortable with her mother coming around. However, he goes out of his way to invite her on his own and not even really tell her until it's too late for her to do anything about it. I mean, it's Nigel we're talking about, so of course he was acting with nothing but the utmost of positive intentions, but that doesn't subvert the fact that at first, we all thought he was astronomically doing more damage than good. With that being said though, we have to give credit where credit is due. Nigel does deserve some props for his role in this one. I mean, he had an injured leg and was hobbling around on a makeshift crutch, and he still scared off those poachers. That is absolute Chad behavior, and just when I thought that we couldn't appreciate Nigel enough, he goes and does something like this. Nigel is genuinely such an S-tier character, and this episode is just one of the many reasons why. One thing that really had the gears turning in my mind was the woman who runs the orangutan sanctuary telling Nigel about how the baby orangutans need to be taught to live among their kind to survive. This right there feels very symbolic of what the Thornberrys are doing for Donnie. They took him in, they gave him a pair of shorts, and they're doing their best to show him what it means to be human. However, while they're having this conversation, we see a young orangutan that Nigel is holding just completely fascinated with him, and particularly his orange facial hair. This baby orangutan just seemed so fascinated by the fact that Nigel's hair was the same color as his. Even when the lady takes the baby away for his feeding, the orangutan still keeps staring at Nigel, almost as if he's trying to connect the dots as to how they could possibly be related, considering that they're both sporting the same natural colors. In general, the similarities between what happens at the orangutan sanctuary and the Thornberrys and Donnie are very interesting. Contrary to how the sanctuary is trying to teach these orangutans how to survive in the wild after being taken and given a domestic life, Nigel and his family are trying to teach Donnie how to be human when all he's ever known is a natural lifestyle. It's the exact opposite of what happens with the orangutans, and in a way, it kind of makes this feel like a full circle kind of episode, coming to that realization in conjunction with the understanding of Donnie's story and what really happened to him. On the note of what happened to Donnie though, I don't think any of us could have possibly imagined just how morbid that Donnie's origin story would be. This poor baby had the happiest life, and it was all ripped away from him by some murderous poachers. Seeing little Donnie and the peaceful life that he lived with his parents, it honestly makes you rethink everything that you thought you knew about him and the way that he is as a person, all the way down to his psychological development. I mean, going through that level of trauma for anyone, no matter their age, is a lot to process. But Donnie going through that at the age that he did, it makes you truly wonder if maybe his general chaotic nature and mannerisms are maybe a trauma response as a result of what he's been through, or if it is simply just a byproduct of his parents being taken from him and having to be raised by an orangutan. You kind of get to wondering, is he wild simply because he's feral, or is he wild because he's hurt? In all reality, PTSD in children can manifest in many symptoms. but some big ones are hyperactivity, intense reactions, difficulty expressing themselves, trouble concentrating, and reenacting trauma, oftentimes through play or in their art. Now, that's not to say that it's for sure Donnie has PTSD, but it's definitely worth noting that having his parents straight up murdered surely could have had some sort of negative effect on him psychologically. I mean, that alone in and of itself could be part of the reason why he pushed people away and instead opted to live with the orangutan that his family was close with. In all reality, his wild and feral demeanor could be less about an upbringing among the animals in the jungle and possibly more of a result of a constant state of psychological alarm caused by what happened when he was young. In the long run, he didn't just lose his parents. He lost his identity. He lost his developed routine. He lost the language that they were all learning together. And now, the only way he knows how to express himself is to babble and scream, or use the one sign that he partially remembered. It's really interesting when we consider that Donnie might even struggle with his identity to a degree, realizing that he was raised by orangutans and that he tends to relate more to the animals on the other side of the camera rather than his parents working the camera. This oftentimes comes through clear as day in his behaviors as well, considering he tends to walk that line between human and animal tendencies. He eats with his hands, he climbs around like an orangutan, and he shows no regard to or even really any understanding of social norms. On top of that, he tends to kind of mimic the behavior of those around him, whether they're animal or human. Now, that right there could indicate a possible developmental mirroring process, which can be pretty common in children with an unstable early life. This is a factor that's certainly curious to keep in mind as it pertains to another episode that we're going to check out, but for now, in the context of this episode, it's really mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing because this is something that we've seen for years now, but we've never really understood why. We never knew how Donnie ended up in the jungle or why he behaves how he does. This one would truly change all of that though, and in the long run, as much as the answers were appreciated, it opened the door for a ton of further questions and topics that weren't ever really explored. The biggest thing I find myself questioning is Donnie's communication. It's interesting because every single thing that he does is to tell us something. He doesn't act out and destroy Debbie's stuff out of anger. He doesn't faceplant into the cake or tear up her diary just for the sake of being destructive. 10 times out of 10, he's not acting out because he wants attention. He's acting out because that's the only language that he has. Furthermore, though it may not come from a place of malice or anger, his destructive nature and wild outbursts are all symptomatic of kids with developmental trauma who don't know how to process or express their feelings. The thing is, Donnie doesn't speak in words. Not because he's dumb or anything, but because he was never taught how. It's honestly not his fault. What Donnie went through, the way that they showed this happening at a crucial point where he was learning language that his parents were teaching him, and the fact that his communication would never really evolve from where it currently is, shows an interesting representation of critical period hypothesis. This is an old understanding that there's a window of early childhood, specifically like before the age of 5, when humans must be exposed to a communication or language, or they may never really fully acquire it. If they don't experience verbal communication by this point, the odds of them grasping it are extremely, extremely low. Poor Donnie lost his parents at such a young age that he kind of missed this crucial window. At this point, his language is just kind of a series of grunts and babbles and gestures rather than a formal spoken language. It's like a constant game of charades for him to get his point across. He can't just up and say, "Oh, I'm really excited right now." Instead, his version of that is slamming his face into a cake. What's really heartbreaking, though, is that what happened with Donnie, the way that he was raised by animals, isn't actually too far-fetched of a story, and there's actually kind of a basis of real-life comparison as far as his ability to verbally communicate is concerned. There have actually been a lot of cases of documented feral children who were either raised by animals in the wild, many of which were actually primates, or just sadly neglected and had developed similarly as a result. One of the most famously studied tragic cases that helped lead to massive breakthroughs in understanding for development of communication in children and how the brain of a feral child operates would be that of a feral girl named Jeannie Wiley. Hers would be a truly tragic upbringing that's honestly very, very far removed from what Donnie went through. However, there are definitely some similarities. This poor little girl was severely abused and neglected by her father. A few months before she would turn 2 years old, he would confine her to a room, immobilizing her and keeping her away from any and all social interaction. She was severely malnourished and kept away from basically any and all stimuli until she was 13 years old and her mother finally escaped from the abusive home with her. This little girl would end up being a case study, and there is a lot of ethical debate over how the scientists who conducted these studies had treated her. But ultimately, when she came into their care, she was a 13-year-old with essentially the mental capacity of a 1-year-old. Over the years, she would make progress in learning nonverbal communication and even some words, but sadly, she would never really develop a first language, even in old age. She would reportedly speak a few words and be pretty good at sign language in modern day, but after facing years of abuse and mistreatment, even in care facilities and foster homes after being rescued from her father's mistreatment, and after losing all the funding for the research that was being done into her, she would ultimately fade out of the scientists' microscopes and the public eye. Her case, though, really did prove a lot of breakthroughs for language development, childhood psychology, and understanding of the brain in general. One of the biggest things, though, is that it proved the fact that the critical period hypothesis isn't really black and white. It was really muddy waters, as clearly language can be learned after that window. However, there are a lot of factors, and sadly, many that were out of Jeannie's control at the time that would lead to her struggles with feeling comfortable exploring verbal communication further. What's really interesting in comparing the case of Jeannie Wiley and what we see in Donnie Thornberry, though, is that the core of it all is development. When Jeannie became a ward of the court, it began a process that would lead to her going from the 13-year-old who's literally salivating everywhere like an infant does, to developing mentally into a semi-functioning person, learning how to swallow food, learning how to go to the bathroom, learning how to walk. Jeannie may have mentally developed at a severely late time in her life, but she still did. However, when we compare that to Donnie, I can't help but notice that he doesn't really seem to make any progress at all. I mean, at one point in the series, Maryanne even talks about when the day comes that Donnie says his first word. However, though we would see Eliza getting older by the last season, Donnie would always remain just as feral as he was in the very first episode. The fact of the matter is, though development is possible for feral children, a lot of times it can be truly hard to catch up when you've missed those imperative developmental milestones. Sure, it could have been a simple design choice by the show's writers, however, it really does mimic a very true-to-life representation of how sometimes when children miss those milestones, they can't catch up, even in the most loving of environments. Ultimately, though, whether his demeanor is a result of trauma or if his inability to communicate is something that will never change, The role that he plays in this family is one that is incredible to really sink into, and it's one that no answer to those questions could ever really change. Donnie is a truly amazing character on so many different levels. He's that perfect mix of comedic relief and tragic character, which is a truly difficult line to walk from a writing perspective. He's the absolute wild card of the family in the sense that you never really know what you're going to get with him. The Thornberrys are all about exploring and documenting the wild, but Donnie himself literally is the wild. The beauty of his character is in the fact that he doesn't just represent chaos for chaos's sake. He's a living, breathing metaphor for the unpredictability of the natural world that his family studies. He can't really be controlled, put in a category, or even really understood. He's just Donnie. In a sense, he's almost like the emotional core of the family, kind of like a physical representation of their moral compass and a symbol of a very compassionate act of collective love. His mere presence in their lives is a constant reminder of why they do what they do and what they fight for. Protecting endangered animals, vulnerable ecosystems, and, in the case of their son, a child who is left for dead by poachers. In a world where it's easy to get swept in the day in and day out of it all, possibly reducing their travels to just pure content creation, Donnie helps them stay morally grounded. He's that constant in-your-face reminder of what nature is all about. Him being in their lives every day doesn't really allow them to just make it be a constant day in and day out grind. The Thornberrys can't really lose sight of why they do all of this because Donnie is always reminding them of the beauty that nature has to offer and why it's so important to preserve that beauty at all costs. On that note, it's truly remarkable to look even deeper at the role that he plays within this family and peel it back another layer by dissecting the role that he plays within each individual character of the family. When it comes to Eliza, sure, she can be rude to him like we saw in this episode, but on the whole, she always has his best interest at heart and tries her hardest to understand him more than anybody. In a way though, it's truly baffling because as much as she tries to understand him, she doesn't. She can talk to animals, but she can't talk to Donnie, who was raised by animals. That paradox right there honestly fascinates me. I always wondered why Eliza couldn't understand him, and ultimately, it boils to the fact that he isn't speaking any animal language. He's just kind of making noises. Even then, she tries her best to interpret him, meanwhile advocating for him and acting as a protector more often than not. Which, of course, stretches her way further than her gifts give her the ability to with any animal. Her trying to understand him and get him under control is something that oftentimes challenges her empathy, as we saw here. She doesn't understand why he's so hyper, and as a result, she's just kind of angered by him. On top of that, he's not cute and cuddly like a lot of the animals that she talks to and helps. He's loud and obnoxious, and sometimes he's really gross. But she still loves him like a brother anyways. In all honesty, Donnie is the only creature that Eliza can't talk to, and it's crazy to realize that might just be why she tries harder with him more than anybody else. Now, whereas Eliza's role in Donnie's life is one that symbolizes curiosity in many different forms, Debbie's would be one that takes a very different shape. We all know that she's the kind of person who won't hesitate to blatantly say what everybody is thinking with zero regard for the possible outcome. Sometimes that's honestly for the best, and other times it results in her putting her foot in her mouth pretty tragically. As it pertains to Donnie though, Debbie's relationship with him truly is symbolic of a coming-of-age story of sorts. However, it isn't just about growing up. It's about growing emotionally and as a person. It's about a relationship that grows into a beautiful sibling dynamic. From the start, her dynamic with him truly is the most honest. She doesn't understand him, she doesn't always like him, and she doesn't even waste time pretending to do either of those things. A lot of times, early on, we would see her in charge of Donnie and just barely even doing the minimum to care for him, such as feeding him ketchup and mustard sandwiches for lunch, or putting in her headphones and reading a magazine while she just kind of ignores him. Over time, though, we would see Debbie stepping into a bit of a different role in Donnie's life. Her inner caregiver would come out more and more. She becomes more protective over Donnie. She becomes surprisingly emotionally invested in him. She even becomes rather insightful towards his needs, being able to interpret him significantly better than she was once able to. At least, that's how I perceived it. There's another episode we're going to check out that really emphasizes that further than this one did, but as it pertains to Debbie in general, Donnie seems to kind of bring out that reluctant caregiver in her. He causes her to abandon her usual apathetic, uncaring nature, and the version of her that exists under all of that sarcasm and detachment really is a sight to behold. In a way, Donnie tends to bring out the best in Debbie, and I truly appreciate that fact. Now, Nigel's role in Donnie's life and the shape that it takes really is the most complex of them all to dissect. At face value, it seems really simple and straightforward. Nigel is his adoptive father, and he does a pretty good job of being a dad to him. However, when we peel back some of the surface level interactions and take in how Nigel handles Donnie, focusing on the psychological aspect, it shines a really different light than I think any of us really ever remembered. I'm gonna be completely honest. As someone who loves Nigel and finds value in nearly everything he does, I was blown away by connecting these dots, and it sort of made me reanalyze everything that I've ever heard Nigel say to Donnie, or every reaction that the two have ever had. It may be hard to pick up on, but in a way, Nigel kind of walks a fine line that leaves him with some inner conflict as it pertains to Donnie, and it really shines through in how he handles him in general, down to the last detail of every interaction. What it really boils down to is that he's kind of struggling with an internal battle of curiosity versus fatherhood. Of course, being a dad is nothing new to Nigel. He's raising 2 girls and doing an absolute stand-up job in doing so. When it comes to Donnie, though, due to Nigel being who he is, he kind of sees Donnie as both a subject to be studied and a son in a way. Now, don't get me wrong here, Nigel is an excellent father to Donnie. He takes care of him and he's built an emotional bond with him. But it does need to be noted that as a naturalist, Nigel is drawn to a lot of Donnie's behaviors out of curiosity. As a father, though, he tries, awkwardly but lovingly, to guide him. That's not to say that their bond is more practical than emotional, of course. I mean, there's plenty of affection in their moments, like when Donnie mimics Nigel or participates in whatever antics that he's got going on. But with that being said, it has to be brought up that Nigel can interact with orangutans and narrate nearly any species like a pro. He seems to nearly always know what to say or how to handle his daughters. But when it comes to Donnie, it's all, "Good heavens, Donnie, old chap," and a lot of parental guesswork. And I guess that's kind of the point. The juxtaposition in how he approaches and reacts to Donnie versus how he does with his biological children, or even just animals in general, is something that often goes overlooked, but in hindsight, you kind of realize that he doesn't necessarily treat Donnie badly by any means. It's just that maybe he's a bit less confident in how he approaches Donnie because the concept of his existence is so foreign to Nigel, even though they've had him in their family for a few years now. Whereas Debbie's relationship with Donnie would evolve over time, Nigel would seem to remain always stuck in this same kind of loop of trying his best, but usually having to take a moment to process what's going on before he acts. It's interesting to factor in that whereas Donnie is the wild, Nigel is often seen as the comic straight man. Sure, he's eccentric, but he's always the one reacting to literally everything happening, regardless of severity, with this overly scholarly and very formal tone. Donnie swings by on a vine babbling 45 sentences per second, and Nigel just responds with a calm yet bewildered "my word." Like, he doesn't ever really try to calm Donnie or tame him at all. He's usually just trying to interpret his actions through the lens of natural science, typically comparing Donnie's actions to that of an animal. He's the character who's grounded and usually there to react to the chaos in a way that just makes it even funnier as his calm demeanor completely clashes with the tone. With all that in mind, in a sense, Nigel kind of treats Donnie like a quirky curiosity. Almost like Donnie's behavior is simply one of nature's oddities to observe. This right here mirrors how older generations sometimes responded to neurodivergent kids. Not necessarily with malice by any means, but more of a clinical detachment or a rather benign understanding. His character serves as a metaphor of sorts for how older parents and teachers sometimes approached atypical children. Sadly, they usually weren't seen as actual people with valid needs or their own things going on in life. They were oftentimes treated as something to observe or figure out. Again, not to say that Nigel's view of Donnie lacks emotion, however, it does come from a very intellectual angle. Nigel does offer support. He does raise Donnie very well. Nevertheless, because Donnie is such a unique case, Nigel often does so in a relatively clueless manner. It's not that he doesn't care, it's just that he doesn't know how to bridge that gap, so to speak. Where someone like Eliza would be quick to understand and empathize with Donnie in any way that she can, Nigel is more the type to feel the need to analyze and explain what he thinks Donnie is saying or going through in that moment. In a rather interesting way, this highlights the massive generational gap in understanding behaviors. A lot of times, younger people engage emotionally or behaviorally. Meanwhile, the older folks kind of engage through facts, analogies, and they'd rather explain what they see as strange behavior from what they define as a safe distance than adapt to it or simply meet it on its own terms. With that being said though, that parallel is one that I do appreciate the way that they approached, because they never really made Nigel seem like the overly studious observer of Donnie. He was always Donnie's dad, and he always cared about him. However, his often bewilderment at Donnie's behaviors and his confusion at how to react at times certainly ring true to the mannerisms of the older generation. Now, when we consider Maryanne and her role in Donnie's life, it's one that's truly a lot more black and white if we're being honest. Her role in his life is truly an important one, and I think that her approach to being a mother to Donnie is really valuable. She's honestly the only one here who treats Donnie like a kid and not like some sort of puzzle that needs to be solved. Sure, she might be the kind of character who does have a bit of a tendency to fade into the background a bit if it isn't a Maryanne-centered episode, but on the whole, she's the one who parents Donnie the most consistently. Her motherly instincts guide her. Her approach to Donnie is one that's ultimately rooted in just trying to love him. She knows that she doesn't need to understand him to do that, and that's a valuable thing that she keeps in mind. That's not to dismiss the value of being understood. However, it's more meant to showcase the value of unconditional love. Maryanne goes out of her way to love Donnie, effortlessly, consistently, and without even asking for any thanks. In a way, her presence makes Donnie's chaotic nature feel a little more safe and contained. It is interesting though because it feels like her approach is almost the exact opposite of Nigel's. Chaos erupts around him and he's just trying to make sense of it all and interpret Donnie. And Maryanne, on the other hand, just seems to accept Donnie. She doesn't chase an explanation for everything that he does. She realizes that he's just a kid like her other two, and it's simple as that. Her role in his life is one that symbolizes the kind of love that a child deserves from their parents, and I think that as simple as that message is, that kind of relationship is imperative for all of us to witness at a young age. Even more interesting than Maryanne's role in Donnie's story, though, would be Darwin's. This is one aspect that I truly adore for the simple fact that Darwin as a character is overall a comedic relief. However, his dynamic with Donnie truly reveals some surprisingly layered emotional truths. Darwin and Donnie's relationship is one built on reluctant bonds and an unspoken attachment that really shines through in this episode specifically. Darwin himself is fascinating within his role of the family alone, considering that he's not human and not one of the kids, but still he's incredibly intelligent and very self-aware. It's honestly kind of surprising that he gets lumped in as a second-class member of the family. He's just the monkey, but he's at least just as intelligent, if not more intelligent than Donnie, who is treated like one of the kids. The only line there really is being human. Intelligence goes out the window because what really defines it for them is the fact that they're all human and Darwin isn't. The result here is a very odd parallel between Darwin and Donnie, where they're both outsiders, but in completely different ways. It's kind of comedic actually, because Darwin is kind of like the Debbie of the animal kingdom. He's easily grossed out, he's always rolling his eyes at everybody else's mannerisms, and much like Debbie, he treats Donnie like an unpredictable little sibling who only exists to ruin his day. We saw that shine through with the white-hot intensity of 1,000 suns throughout the first 3/4 of this episode. However, underneath that irritation is something far more nuanced. In a way, Donnie represents a kind of chaotic mirror of Darwin. Whereas Darwin is verbal with Eliza, very articulate, and a full-blown civilized animal in a sweater vest, Donnie is his feral, loud, instinct-driven opposite. They're both on two completely opposite ends of the behavioral spectrum, and as a result, Darwin oftentimes feels superior to Donnie, even though the rest of the family sees him as less than Donnie in a way. It's even more intriguing when we consider the sibling dynamic as well. Sure, Darwin may judge Donnie and not always like him, but in a way, he needs Donnie. He needs someone to feel more composed than. Like, Donnie being around is kind of the key thing that makes Darwin come across as so much more mature and intelligent. On top of that, he's bonded with Donnie. At this point, he doesn't just tolerate him, he loves him. In a way, without Donnie, Darwin's place in the family becomes a lot more isolating and lonely because he'd feel like the only outsider there. I mean, we even see Darwin full-blown have an emotional breakdown at the thought of Donnie no longer being a part of their family. The truly amazing thing about this is that this story makes their dynamic kind of devastating in a way. Like, Darwin didn't choose Donnie as a brother. However, their relationship blossomed into a brotherly one, and when Darwin realized that he might lose him, seeing the way that it hit him really underlined just how close that they've gotten over these years. What it really boils down to is that Donnie really is such a symbolic character that plays a huge role in every aspect of this show. He's not just a member of this family, he's a little slice of the jungle mixing up their everyday life. He's a character that truly underlines the biggest theme of this show. Humans are a part of nature, not their own separate entity. He's the reminder to us as viewers that the Thornberrys aren't just observing animals and making documentaries. They're going as far as inviting the wild into their home in the name of their conservation efforts. And Donnie is living physical proof of how much that this family cares. Now, if there were anything else that I want to discuss before we move on to the next episode that peels back even further our understanding of Donnie, it would be the foundation. Honestly, I just find the entire existence of the organization as it's painted in this show to be kind of odd. The Foundation comes across as this mysterious and looming entity throughout the entire series. Like, sure, there's an episode where we see the head of the Foundation's son come to visit, and there's an episode where they put on a ceremony to celebrate the Thornberrys, but other than that, they're just kind of the entity looming over with a constant threat of funding cuts, hard deadlines, and sometimes peculiar or dangerous requests for documentaries. Of course, I totally understand that as a legitimate organization, the Foundation for Natural Science needs to uphold deadlines and take their funding seriously, but nevertheless, they're not really ever portrayed as a positive force in this show, ironically. I mean, they are the entire reason that Nigel and Maryanne get to live this lifestyle, have all of this expensive equipment, and get to live out of the convy. I mean, to give them credit where it's due, they've done an astronomical amount for the Thornberrys, and the fact that they let their children come along with them as they work is certainly mind-blowing. Like, that's honestly a huge liability for them, right? Even with all of that being said though, they still come across as a constant threat in nearly every episode that they're mentioned in. And I can't help but wonder if maybe this dynamic is kind of mirroring a sad reality, given the fact that this show accurately portrays so many things, including conservationism, opposition to poaching, and the natural order of wildlife. It wouldn't surprise me to find out that at some point, someone who worked on this show also worked on a wildlife documentary that was funded by a large organization who treated them like garbage and kind of held them in the golden handcuffs of, here's everything you could ever want for your production, but you're gonna do it by our standards and put yourself at risk on our behalf, or else. I mean, they say to write what you know, and well, I have a feeling that someone somewhere along the lines of creating this show knew what this was like to a degree. The entire premise of this show and the interactions with the Foundation just seem a little too specific for them not to be somewhat rooted in real-life experiences. Like we talked about earlier though, knowing the truth about Donnie's past and where he came from is such a shocking revelation, and it's nearly impossible to not want to reframe past episodes and consider how different these situations feel with that extra bit of context. Even bigger than that though, is how this added context can actually give us such a deeper understanding for why Donnie may have done certain things in the past, or why things may have played out the way that they did. One of the most prominent examples of this would be the Season 1 episode, Flight of the Donnie. This episode begins in the Andes mountain range, specifically near Cusco, Peru, with a shot of a baby condor having just hatched from its egg and rolled out of its nest. Next thing you know, we cut to Eliza and her father looking through binoculars and admiring a massive condor with a remarkable wingspan flying through the sky above.
Maryanne!
There you are. Let's sally forth. The Andean condor waits for no one.
Okay, just... I gotta... I'm almost Dad.
Maryanne, clearly being under the weather, can barely even stand, let alone carry her backpack. At that, Nigel insists that she stay in bed today as one of the girls fills her spot, taking over her filming.
What do you say, girls? Who wants to come along?
I do.
She does.
Just point me to the condor.
Much to Eliza's dismay, her mom says that she's gonna need to wait a few years before she's ready to fill her shoes. Of course, with Eliza not being able to fulfill that role, that leaves Debbie nominated for the position, even though she would clearly rather be doing literally anything else.
Eliza, this is a special day for you as well. Think of it, shouldering the challenge of motherhood with your mother as your charge.
Okay, Dad.
Eliza walks onto the convy to find her mom struggling with work as she sneezes and knocks her film reel onto the floor. Eliza insists that her mom take it easy, saying that it's her job to take care of her today. She sends her to bed, saying that she's gonna whip her up some breakfast. It doesn't really go as planned though, as Darwin struggles to put an orange through the juicer and Donnie ends up starting a food fight with the pancake batter. Ultimately though, it doesn't make much of a difference as Eliza goes down to bring her mom a cup of orange juice, only to find that she's taken some cold medicine and is out like a light.
Night, Mom.
Eliza takes the syrup from Donnie, and before she can clean him up, he's already gotten his hands on a pillow and has started to cover it in his pancake batter mess. Eliza tries to take it from him, but in the ensuing game of tug-of-war, the pillow rips right in half, causing feathers to rain in the convy, covering Donnie as if he were a bird.
Donnie, come on. I'm trying to take care of Mom, so I can't have you being so... You. There. Play out here. Bye-bye, bye-bye, bye-bye.
As Eliza is struggling with that, we cut up to the mountains where Nigel is narrating a shot that he's got Debbie filming. Within moments though, Debbie realizes that filming is actually pretty rad. She starts to have fun with it and zooms in on different parts of her dad, saying that she's taking the show in a different direction from now on.
Your mother generally points the camera at one.
That was the old show. This is the new show, a Debbie Thornberry production. Put these on. They'll give you tood.
I'm afraid I can't see anything.
Yes, and come on, Nigel, get with it. Haven't you ever seen a rock video?
Nigel tries to talk some sense into Debbie, but she's insistent that she's got this, while she drops the expensive camera lens on the ground and completely fails to get a close-up shot of a massive condor on a rock directly behind her. The majestic bird flies away, and as it glides over the mountain range, it catches sight of Donnie sitting on the ground outside of the convy. He starts banging on the door and begging to be let in, but Eliza tells him to stop bothering her. Moments later though, when she hears the booming crow of the condor, she looks outside to see it flying above. She goes to wake up her mom, hoping to get a shot of it for the show.
Mom! Mom, get up! Oh no, Donnie!
The condor flies above with Donnie, taking him back to her nest as Eliza and Darwin begin scaling the cliffside, hoping to reach him. Darwin starts worrying, saying that he's scared for Donnie's safety and concerned that he's gonna be eaten. However, Eliza puts his mind at ease, telling him that condors don't eat living creatures.
Debbie! There she is! A mother condor tenderly caring for her young.
Nice. Ah, it'll work great with a guitar solo.
Not too far away from there, Eliza and Darwin are scaling a paper-thin cliffside as they make their way toward a cave, hopeful that it'll lead them upward towards the condor's nest. Sadly though, they end up finding nothing but terror inside as they're greeted by a sound unlike anything that they've ever heard before. Off in the distance, Nigel hears the sound coming from the cave, suggesting that maybe him and Debbie should go check it out. But she just railroads right over him, saying that they're gonna film the shot that she wants instead. For her artistic vision though, there's just one lone rock that seems to be bothering her, so she makes the decision to pluck that rock from its home and toss it before they start their filming.
We're about to witness a very rare sight indeed. The tender ritual of motherhood as demonstrated by a majestic female condor. And now, we will see this miracle for the first time as we slowly begin to run!
Nigel and Debbie end up taking cover behind a rock as the landslide that Debbie caused makes its way around them, leaving them miraculously unscathed. Eliza and Darwin have somehow made it up to the condor's nest, only to be floored by the sight of this mother condor treating Donnie as if he were her own baby. Darwin suggests that Eliza just go up to her and explain the mix-up, but when she approaches the condor, it's immediately on the defensive.
Go away, you beady-eyed little beast. This is my home.
I'll be gone in a second. I just came up here to get Donnie.
Donnie? What's a Donnie?
Him. He's a boy. He's a human boy.
I may be in danger, but I'm not stupid. Now get lost.
Eliza and Darwin end up taking cover in some bushes while they plan their next attempt to get Donnie back. Eliza decides that she's going to try to wait for the condor to leave and then rush in there to take Donnie. When it comes time to put that plan into action though, it doesn't go anywhere near as Eliza had hoped. She makes it to Donnie, but within seconds the condor swoops down from above and smacks her with its wing. Yet again, Eliza runs away defeated. However, when the mother condor starts trying to teach Donnie how to fly, Eliza knows that she has to think quick if she's gonna save him.
If I can't get to Donnie, maybe I can get Donnie to come to me.
The mother condor swoops down, diving head first for Donnie as she watches him completely failing to take flight. At the last second, she grabs him and saves him from hitting the ground, and she soars off into the distance with him, leaving Eliza having to think outside of the box here. Some time passes, and a while later, we see Donnie happily taking a nap in the condor's nest when she begins scouting for food. Down below, Eliza hides while she has Darwin put on an act like he's randomly dying, hoping that the condor will want to eat his corpse after watching it happen. Oddly enough, she immediately takes flight, interested in scavenging through his remains. While she swoops down to grab Darwin, Eliza sneaks into the nest to take Donnie away. Things take a pretty rough turn though when Nigel and Debbie end up seeing the condor circling above, and they decide to make their way towards the nest to set up for filming before she gets back. As the two arrive at the nest, which is empty now thanks to Eliza taking Donnie out of it, the condor ends up getting fooled by Darwin, realizing that he was just playing possum this entire time. The condor flies off angrily. Meanwhile, back at her nest, Debbie is currently standing in the middle of it, saying that she's gonna film from the center of this weird circle of rocks. Nigel starts to warn her, saying that condors are very territorial and that it's gonna be very angry if it finds her in its nest.
But you see, that rocky area where you're standing, you see, lovely, it's what condors use in place of the traditional nest.
Oh, this is smashing! Debbie, quickly, the camera!
I got it, Dad. I got it.
Nigel starts congratulating Debbie for her fantastic filming skills. That is, until he realizes that she had the camera backwards and was filming her eyeball the entire time. As that's happening, Eliza, Darwin, and Donnie are trying their best to outrun the condor, who very adamantly wants Donnie back. She ends up cornering them on a ledge, and she approaches them, shaking and hissing in anger.
Give him back, you little bird grabber!
No, you don't understand. I'm supposed to be taking care of him, and that's what I'm gonna do. Donnie!
It's true. It's just a human, and a kind of scraggly one at that.
Eliza apologizes to the condor, saying that she knows that she thought Donnie was her baby, but almost immediately the condor comes clean, saying that she never thought that he was her baby. She just thought that he was abandoned and in need. She says that her baby wandered off and she hasn't seen him since.
Hey, I know that sound. I know where your baby is.
Next thing you know, we see Eliza and Donnie soaring through the sky on the back of the condor as it holds Darwin in its talons. They majestically fly through the air until they make a quick landing in front of the cave that Darwin and Eliza ended up wandering into earlier. The group slowly wanders in, hearing the same exact ominous noise that they heard the first time.
Oh, who's Mama's little bone picker?
I am.
At that, we see Eliza riding on the back of the condor while Donnie lovingly holds onto her back, taking in the sight of the Andes. Meanwhile, behind them is Darwin, who's being airlifted by Junior. They make it back to the convey, and it isn't all too long before Maryanne starts stirring from the sounds of Eliza, Darwin, and Donnie upstairs.
Eliza? Oh my goodness! Eliza, you've done a wonderful job manning the fort today.
Oh, it was nothing major.
Just then, the two hear Nigel calling from outside, saying that they're home. They go outside to be greeted by Debbie, who's just non-stop going on about how hard getting a shot of a condor was, talking about how she went through landslides, giant birds, and her dad not wanting to do a thing that she demanded. All the while, her mother is easily capturing a beautiful shot of the condor and her baby that Eliza helped save.
If you need me, I'll be in the shower for the next 3 days.
Nicely done, dear. Feeling better?
Much. But then Eliza's been taking care of all of us today. And speaking of all of us, where's Donnie?
Donnie! Oh, no.
Man, looking back at this episode, I'm absolutely floored to realize just how different this one feels after watching The Origin of Donnie. Of course, we all saw this originally as it aired and didn't really think all too much about it. We had no idea about what Donnie had been through or why he was the way that he was. It was easy to look at this as a simple episode about mistaken identity. When we look past that first layer though, and peel back the real meaning behind all of this, in hindsight, it is absolutely stunning. One big thing that this episode highlights is the fact that nobody's perfect, and the dynamics that we discussed earlier, as far as how our main characters interact with Donnie, aren't really set in stone. They can be applied to most scenarios. However, the outcome can't always be so predictable. For example, this one highlighted Eliza's maternal instincts very well. Like we talked about earlier, Eliza tries her best to look out for Donnie and to take care of him. She does everything she can to understand him and see where he's coming from. But, as we saw in both this episode and The Origin of Donnie, she's not perfect. She has a tendency to get overwhelmed with Donnie being so Donnie. As a result, bad things tend to happen on her account. In The Origin of Donnie, it was her yelling at him and pushing him away. In this one though, it was in the form of her getting fed up with his antics and just full-blown putting him outside by himself. Like, if I'm being honest, that's some behavior that I'd expect out of someone like Debbie, not Eliza. This really seemed like a genuinely out-of-character act on her part. The way she just brazenly throws him outside and doesn't even take a moment to clean him up first. It's like she's behaving as if she's a mother who's on like her 5th kid now, just having to go through the motions and not really upholding a standard that she once proudly held, just from the sheer overwhelm of it all and the fact that the job can never be done. However, Eliza isn't a mother at all. She's this little boy's sister. I guess with that being said, that's the whole point. Eliza is just a little girl and she shouldn't really be in charge because she's prone to making decisions like this and not even really considering if it's a bad idea. Debbie probably would have done the same though, so I guess maybe neither of them should be in charge because they are very irresponsible. I do have to admit though that it is worth acknowledging that this does also bring a certain level of realism to these characters. Eliza not being perfect at caring for Donnie, as much as she wishes she was, shows us that people are flawed and that's part of our nature, no matter how high of expectations that we set for ourselves. In the long run, this episode also says a lot about Eliza and her sense of guilt. Eliza says that she's looking after Donnie, but she really isn't. She shoved him outside to maintain her own peace while tending to her sick mom. Now, that in and of itself definitely mirrors a lot about society and how sometimes people have a tendency to outsource care when somebody becomes inconvenient for them. In the case of Eliza, though, there was no one else to outsource this to. That wasn't an option to her. However, that didn't really stop her from acting as if it was. With that in mind too, it needs to be pointed out that this isn't from a place of cruelty whatsoever. It's not really coming from the angle of not caring. It's strictly a result of burnout. Like, she's a kid trying to be a parent to 2 different people here and struggling. Sadly though, in that struggle, Donnie becomes abandoned. As tough as it is, episodes like this are truly crucial because they show us as viewers that it isn't always cut and dry. Eliza isn't always the hero. Just because she's the main character doesn't mean that she's always in the right when she acts. Of course, what it really comes down to is that she wants to be Donnie's protector. But in all reality, she made a mistake here that definitely could have cost him his life. That right there adds a level of complexity to her character that really makes this show stick out so much more among the sea of Nicktoons. One other really striking aspect of this episode to me is the entire role of the mother condor from start to finish. both in what it represents and what she thinks that she represents. For all intents and purposes here, the condor acts as a surrogate mother. It's not just some big bird that swooped in and took Donnie. It believes that it's acting as a stand-in for Donnie's biological mother. This condor here, she's grieving. She lost her own child and now she's spending her time searching for him. In the process though, she misidentifies Donnie in an extremely visceral, emotional way. One that forgoes any logic whatsoever. She doesn't even realize that he's not a bird and she doesn't really care. She's a mother missing her baby. And she sees a messy, helpless creature completely alone. It's not really her fault that her instinct to protect kicked in. All in all, that was just nature taking its course here. With that being said though, in a very obscure way, it mirrors the trauma that we witnessed in the origin of Donnie. A parent desperate not to lose their child, even if the child isn't theirs biologically. In a sense, this mother condor swooping in, even though she knew that Donnie wasn't her baby, it metaphorically represents all of the mothers that Donnie has lost and all that have stepped in to try to fill that role. His birth mom, his orangutan mother, Maryanne, even Eliza and Debbie in a way. This condor represents that strong maternal instincts that resides within each and every one of them. The instinct that tells them to step in and help when they see a young creature like Donnie helpless and alone. On a deeper level though, that condor also serves as a metaphor for Eliza's fear and guilt. One important thing to keep in mind in that regard is how in the origin of Donnie, we saw Eliza facing the constant fear of Donnie returning to the forest to live, or even worse, them having to give Donnie back to his parents. It's no secret to us that Eliza lives in a fear of someone else coming in and taking Donnie, thinking that they're the one should be taking care of him instead. This condor swooping down and taking him while Eliza isn't even paying attention is without a doubt symbolic of her possibly unconscious fear that someone better for him will take him away. Like, she might not even know by this point in the series that she even struggles with that fear. This is season 1 after all. Looking back at it though, with the origin of Donnie fresh in our minds, yeah, this definitely feels like it could be potentially some subtle foreshadowing. It's also worth pointing out though that this episode is a huge testament to Eliza and her tendency to drop the ball when it comes to taking accountability. This entire episode is her chasing down her own mistake and trying to fix it rather than acknowledging it head on. This one is her trying to cover her tracks and take care of the situation that she created before her dad realizes what she did and before her mom wakes up from her nap. Like, Eliza was forced into this mom role by her father, and she completely failed. She neglects Donnie and he almost ends up getting killed, and she leaves her mom, who she's supposed to be taking care of, unattended. Of course, I'll mention again that all of this pressure shouldn't have been placed on a little girl. However, the lack of accountability is definitely worth analyzing further. When we get to the point at the end where the condor realizes that Donnie really is a human, she apologizes for the mix-up, saying that she thought he was abandoned. Yet, Eliza is incredibly quick to dismiss that, saying that he wasn't abandoned, even though he really was. She left him out there, all dirty and covered in feathers. In my opinion, this moment is incredibly heavy to take in when you stop and just sit with it for a bit. Eliza's denial really just boils down to a defense mechanism. She's pretty much trying to convince herself that her mistake didn't really count and that she didn't fail Donnie. Which, this right here, actively reflects in a very literal way how some adults tend to cope with their failures. They rewrite the truth to protect their own ego. Essentially, this is kind of a morbid point to digest because when we look at the origin of Donnie, the boy's entire backstory is built on real abandonment and heartbreaking sacrifice on multiple levels. In this episode, that happens again. He's abandoned yet again, but it's just kind of glossed over. Eliza doesn't even really seem to feel bad for how she just threw Donnie outside like he was disposable. When it comes to Donnie, his role here has to be the most fascinating of all, which really says a lot considering that the boy can't even speak. He has no dialogue, yet his actions here almost speak more than any words ever could. First of all, I found myself completely enamored with the fact that he seemed so comfortable going with this condor. She decided that she was his new mother, and Donnie seemed pretty happy to go along with it. He napped in her nest, he got close to her, and he didn't really bat an eye for even a second, whereas most people would have likely had some sort of inherent fear. Ultimately though, his lack of fear when he was taken by the condor isn't just a play of cartoon logic. It actually says a ton about his internal thought process. It needs to be acknowledged that Donnie's earliest socialization wasn't human. Sure, he had some time with his parents, but for the most part he socialized with orangutans. As a result, his model for safety, communication, and trust is animal-based. It isn't rooted in human experiences whatsoever. He's really good at reading nonverbal cues, energy, and body language, especially in animals. Far better than most humans do. In the case of the condor, she wasn't acting aggressively by any stretch of the mind. She was nurturing. She picked him up gently and she cooed over him. As a result, there wasn't really any panic on his part. He was able to pick up on that natural maternal energy that she was exuding. It's really interesting to keep in mind, especially when we consider that body language fluency is pretty common in kids raised in atypical, or in the case of Donnie, low verbal environments. The true core of it all here is that he trusts actions over language. This is yet another huge reflection of the psychology behind children raised in unstable households. They learn to be adaptable, which in and of itself can be a good thing, but at that young of an age, adapting to a confusing or constantly changing environment is something that becomes a necessity because survival means understanding the vibe and the feeling rather than societal rules or verbal cues. Even with that in mind though, his comfort here throughout this episode is enough to raise some eyebrows and make you question him and his understanding of parenting. It's undeniable that Donnie has a very odd comfort in being raised by anyone. His birth parents, the orangutan, the Thornberrys, the condor. He seems oddly comfortable in really any of their care, and that right there says a few very specific things psychologically. First of all, Donnie's attachment isn't really rooted to any one identity, which is actually pretty rare. Most kids in general anchor to one caregiver or, at minimum, develop distress when separated from their home base, so to speak. Donnie, though, unlike most kids, shows signs of attachment ambivalence, or even just kind of a general disorganized attachment. Like, he craves love and social connection, however, he doesn't really seem to require it from any one specific person. He's open to getting love wherever it might come from and from whoever is willing to give it, be it a person, orangutan, or a condor. On a bigger picture though, this could speak to some abandonment trauma on his part. As much as it hurts to connect these dots, there's a high likelihood that Donnie learned pretty early on not to expect permanence from his caregivers. His parents cared for him for a few years. The orangutans cared for him for a few years. and now the Thornberrys have cared for him for a few years. Again, this shows his adaptability, but it also morbidly opens the door for the possibility that this is just psychological survival at this point. He sees the condor taking him in and loving him, and in his mind, that could very well mean that he's just cycling to his new caretaker for a few years. The fact that he's so fluid in who can be his family could also speak to a fragmented sense of self, when we stop to consider that without language, he can't possess the ability to build a strong narrative identity. He doesn't possess the ability to say, I am Donnie, this is where I come from, this is who I belong with. His full concept of self is built entirely through mirroring others' behavior and adapting to the environment that he finds himself pushed into. As sad as it is, that's why he can seamlessly blend into so many different ecosystems, and why he doesn't really panic when someone new claims him as their own. Of course, it's not that he doesn't value family or grasp the concept of individual identity. However, it shows that his concept of family is very instinctual. To him, it's a thought process of who feeds me, who's kind to me, and who takes care of me when I'm scared. That right there is why he bonds so quickly, and why love from a condor feels just as valid as love from Eliza or Nigel to him. What it really funnels down to in a lot of ways, though, is that Donnie being okay with living with anyone isn't just a symptom of a traumatic past. It's also a big statement of radical belonging. In a lot of truly amazing ways, Donnie is a symbol of adaptability, resilience, and cross-species empathy. He's like a child of the earth, somewhere in the middle of human and animal. He's, in many ways, what the Thornberrys aspire to be. Someone who doesn't just observe nature, but is so in tune with it that it's like he's at one with nature. Because for Donnie, the jungle isn't really foreign, it's his original home. As far as this analysis goes, though, it's very striking to realize just how many mirrors that this show had a tendency to hold up. It would portray so many themes that could be reflective of real-life situations and emotional themes that a lot of us would face at some point in our lives. From the representation of conservation and anti-poaching stances all the way to the subtle ins and outs of family dynamics, this show would do a truly amazing job of covering bases. It went out of its way to show us that even if Donnie wasn't understood, he was accepted, which is a very important thing to have in life. But when we consider all of the mirrors that we've taken the time to glance into thus far, there's one that we haven't seen which might just be the most striking of all. One that shows what it's like to be understood for the very first time in your life. One that would take Donnie from a character who was passively accepted and show him what it means to find somebody just like him. Someone who doesn't speak human words, but whose soul speaks the same exact language that his does. This would come in the form of none other than the Season 2 episode, Two's Company. This episode takes place at the Yasuni National Park in Ecuador.
And there he sits in all his hard-shelled glory, lonesome Jake, the last of his species. Ta-ta, Jake. When you are gone, there shall be no more.
And cut! That's a take.
Excuse me? But what happened to all the other tortoises like Lonesome Jake?
The man explains that many years ago, seafaring vessels would stop at the Galapagos Islands and take tortoises for food. It didn't take long for a couple of species to go extinct as a result. Jake's species was one of those that was very heavily affected. Eliza is absolutely crushed to hear that people were directly responsible for what happened to those poor tortoises. Before you know it, she runs right up to Lonesome Jake, striking up a conversation with him.
How you doing?
Oh, things are looking good. I mean, any day now I'll be hitching up and starting a family.
Don't you know? You're You're the last one of your species.
I am?
There won't be any more like you, ever.
There won't? Well, just when everything was going along so well, I find out I'm the end of the line.
Jake asks Eliza for a few moments by himself so he can remember the better times, and at that, Eliza just feels awful. She feels terrible for exposing Jake to such a dark and disturbing truth, and in general for mankind being what destroyed his species. Ultimately, she decides that she's gonna go on the search for another tortoise, hoping that she can find a female wandering around somewhere. That proves to be a lot harder than she expected, however, as Eliza goes around asking every animal that she comes across, yet not a single one has seen another giant tortoise like Jake.
Hey! You know that tortoise that lives over there?
Jake, the tortoise? Sure, I know everybody.
Have you ever seen any other tortoises like him before?
You're asking the right bird. I'm pretty sure I did.
Where?
Over there, the place with water all around.
An island? The Galapagos, we were just there. But which island? What does it look like?
Well, it was big, and there was a hill that smelled like fire.
A volcano?
Eliza realizes that he must be talking about the Isle of Isabella, the home of the only volcano she saw nearby. However, the bird warns her that he saw the tortoise inside of the volcano near the bottom. At that, Eliza wastes no time in telling her parents about the tortoise, and before you know it, they're off in a plane to see if they can track it down, leaving Debbie in charge of taking care of Donnie while they're gone.
Okay, Donnie, let's review all the rules. Leave me alone. That ought to cover everything. Oh, okay, that is it. You just made it into my "Why am I miserable" collage.
As Debbie sits back down, Donnie runs off, babbling to himself happily. A while later, though, Debbie realizes that Donnie is nowhere to be found. Just like that, we cut to him chasing a dragonfly through the jungle when he comes upon something that I don't think he or any of us ever expected that we would see. Donnie ends up falling from the branch and making the girl laugh. At that moment, though, we cut right back over to Eliza and her family arriving at the Isle of Isabella. She runs ahead of her parents, heading directly into this volcano with Darwin at her side, and within seconds, she sees the massive tortoise standing nearby, hiding inside of its shell. She runs up and says hello, absolutely delighted to meet a female tortoise named Samantha, voiced by none other than the late great Phyllis Diller. Eliza introduces herself and starts telling her that she met another tortoise just like her and that she'd love to introduce her to him.
Him? You mean a male?
Yep.
Goodness, I haven't seen one of them in summers. I was starting to think I'd never lay any eggs. Who knows? Maybe I'll have a family before I get old.
That's the plan, Sam.
In the blink of an eye, Eliza and her parents fly the tortoise back to Yasuni, where a ton of people are gathered, completely dumbfounded that lonesome Jake wasn't actually the very last of this species. Within moments, they have Jake in a cage across from Sam, preparing to introduce the two, who both seem equally excited to meet each other. Maryanne gets the camera rolling, feeling confident that the Foundation is just gonna eat this footage up. As Nigel narrates the moment, they open up the cages, allowing the last two of this species to see each other for the very first time. At the beginning, it seems to go pretty well, as Eliza feels confident that she single-handedly saved an entire species from extinction. However, as 4 hours pass, everybody gets bored waiting for something to happen when the tortoises just kind of end up standing around. Eventually, Nigel and Maryanne decide that they're going to go and research the habits of tortoises so that they can see what they might be able to do to help them along. As the two of them go into the combi, Eliza takes a moment to catch up with the tortoises and see what's happening between them.
What's going on?
What do you mean? I'm just taking my time before making the move.
How much time do you need?
Yeah, I'm a tortoise, remember? Don't worry, I got a plan. I'm gonna stick out my neck and roar at her.
Roar?
Yeah, I'll roar so loud her head'll spin.
No, don't do that. You want her to like you. Besides, tortoises don't roar. Lions roar.
What? You sure about that?
Eliza tells Jake with the utmost of confidence that he just needs to be nice and don't roar at her, before directly going over to Sam and telling her that she needs to go up to Jake and introduce herself. Like Jake did, she questions Eliza, seeming like this goes against her instincts. However, she ends up going along with it, feeling convinced by Eliza's confident nature. As that's all happening, we cut back over to Debbie, who's wandering the jungle looking for Donnie, who's off running and playing with his new girlfriend. As the two have an absolute blast together, eventually they're approached by a jaguar, which immediately has Donnie on edge. However, within a few seconds, he realizes that this jaguar is actually the girl's mother. Next thing you know, Donnie is laying with the jaguars and his new girlfriend, sharing a touching moment as her mother gives her approval to him being a part of their pack. All the while, back at camp, progress is finally being made thanks to Eliza giving the tortoises a bit of advice. Everyone watches in suspense as the tortoises slowly inch closer to each other, until finally they come face to face.
Cupid's arrow seems to have landed squarely on the shells of two very special tortoises. Let's watch.
Where's he going?
Away from her.
Everybody loses their hope, except for Nigel, who says that they just need to keep doing their researching, hoping that they can figure out a way to light the spark between the two tortoises. While they get back to it, Eliza goes to talk to Jake and ask him why he's so upset. We learn that he has his shell in a bunch because he's sure that Sam doesn't like him.
Oh, you've got it all wrong. She just came over to see if...
That's what I mean. No female tortoise should ever approach a male. What got in her head?
Look, I'll talk to her. Samantha, I've got to tell you...
Never in my life has a male ever treated me that way.
In what way?
He never roared.
Maybe that's because tortoises don't roar.
Whose shell have you been under all your life? Everybody knows a male tortoise roars when he finds a female he likes.
As the two tortoises decide to have another go at it, Eliza sits back and everyone notices them walking up to each other again. The whole crowd gets into position and Maryanne starts rolling as they all witness the two tortoises come face to face.
Wow.
Ow!
Eliza, he's biting her.
This is too much.
Oh, look.
Toodles, what exactly are you doing?
He was biting her.
That's what tortoises do, lovey.
Nigel tries to explain to Eliza that this is all just a part of their normal mating ritual, but by that point, it's a little too late. Eliza's already thoroughly burned the bridge between the tortoises, and they're turning away from each other and refusing to talk. Just then, though, she comes clean with both of them, saying that if they should be mad at anybody, they should be mad at her because she's the one who told Jake to roar and she's the one who told Sam to approach him. All because she has no idea how tortoises and their mating rituals work. Sadly, though, she's left feeling like she destroyed the only chance of them repopulating their species because of her foolish ways. At that, we jump right back over to Donnie and his girlfriend as they continue to play with one another. She headbutts him, sending him flying backwards. When he returns the favor, though, she ends up falling back into a mud puddle, getting just completely covered in mud. The girl immediately splits the bouquet of flowers with Donnie, and the two go to town, chomping them down together. Meanwhile, back at the campsite, everyone is getting involved in ushering in a new generation of giant tortoises. They even have a backdrop set up around them with lights to simulate a warm spring day. With all the pressure of the world on them and the cameras rolling, we cut over to Debbie in the jungle looking for Donnie. She wanders and calls out to him, but little does she know he's sleeping nearby with his new jaguar family. The mother ends up hearing her calling for him, and she's immediately on high alert, growling and preparing to attack if she feels the need to. Donnie and his girlfriend wake up to the commotion, and he immediately realizes that it's his sister out here looking for him.
Donnie! You found a girl, Donnie? Nice kitty.
As the jaguar mother is on high alert, Debbie reaches her hand out to Donnie, telling him that it's time to go home with her. But just then, he turns around to see his girlfriend standing there, begging him to stay with her.
Please. Things would be way too boring without you. You are such a real pain. Okay. I'm happy to see you too. Come on, Jungle Boy, let's go.
As Debbie walks off with Donnie, the little feral girl stands there feeling heartbroken about losing the first person she's met that's like her. Meanwhile, back at the campsite, everyone believes that they have the setting perfect for the turtles to do their thing. They have the humidity just right, the lighting, food, they're even fanning them with leaves. As the two tortoises begin to enjoy each other's company, though, Nigel trips on a cord and goes tumbling, absolutely demolishing all of their hard work that they put into setting the scene. That doesn't really matter all too much at this point though, because all that really needed to happen was letting nature take its course.
For me? Oh, that was a very nice roar.
Thank you.
Ooh. A little to the left. Perfect.
Mom, Dad, look!
Got it!
As Nigel, Maryanne, and Eliza celebrate their victory, Debbie runs up with Donnie, saying that she has a picture to show them that's gonna absolutely change their lives. However, when she looks for it, the picture has seemingly sprouted legs and wandered off.
Oh, don't worry. It'll turn up somewhere.
Now, this episode is one that completely shatters the foundation of the show. It's one that in the overall narrative really rocks the boat in a massive way, through a very rich subplot hidden underneath some tortoises being put in a very awkward position. Up until this point, Donnie existed in a narrative vacuum of sorts. He was the singular wild child, the only unsolved mystery, and the family's little anomaly. Like, his whole existence within this show and within the family structure is completely embedded in that uniqueness and singularity. When he meets that little feral girl, however, that identity that's been assigned to him completely disappears, and behind that curtain is a very complicated sight to behold, leaving him torn between his life that he knows and loves and the possibilities. Even deeper than that though, meeting another feral child not only completely surprises Donnie, it kind of redefines him in a way. In our eyes, and I'd imagine in his own eyes as well. All of a sudden, he isn't the only wild kid raised by nature and an animal parent that assumed the role of their guardian. There's another person like him. However, she hasn't been rescued. She still lives in the jungle, seemingly thriving under the care of her jaguar mother. She's wild, functional on her own terms, and she's completely okay with it all. In a way, this kind of challenges our understanding of Donnie and likely calls his own perceptions into questions in a very interesting way. Taking one step into her life for even just one night has him likely wondering if he was supposed to move on to a life with the Thornberrys, or if he could have remained like her and still found the same happiness. I mean, if someone else like him remained in the wild and was absolutely flourishing, does that mean that he could have made a different choice in the matter? These are all thoughts I imagine were going through Donnie's head as he was making the decision whether or not to go home with Debbie. Sure, Donnie doesn't possess the vocabulary to ask these questions himself, but his demeanor and actions throughout this one spell it out pretty loud and clear. He became completely infatuated with this girl from the moment that he laid eyes on her. Not only romantically, but existentially in a way. She's very much like him, and yet not like him at all. He mimics her, studies her, and tries to belong in her world, just like he does to the Thornberrys. And most of all, when it came time to leave, he hesitated. Even if it was just for a brief moment, he still hesitated and looked back, wondering what could have been. This right here was the first real true moment of existential indecision that we've seen from him. Throughout the whole series, no matter where he ends up, he always knows that in the convy with the Thornberrys is where he belongs. However, this one would truly shake that understanding up in the sense that it saw Donnie actually having to choose, taking the time to contemplate if his life with the Thornberrys is really what he wants. It was interesting to hear Debbie call her girl Donnie, because in all reality, she isn't just a companion or a romantic interest for Donnie. She's almost like an alternate universe version of him in a sense. She's what he would be like if he was still living in the rainforest with his orangutan mother and brother. For Donnie, more than anything, seeing this vision of what he could have been likely complicates his view of who he is and muddies the waters as far as his feelings regarding his life choices. As far as Donnie as a character goes though, this one peeled back so many layers of his psyche. It showed us that though he may be incapable of proper speech and he didn't develop a first language, he does have properly developed emotions. He can process happiness, sadness, and, as we saw in this episode, love. Ultimately, this aspect doubles down on the fact that Donnie picks up on everything through vibe and body language. He's had to rely heavily on that gut instinct, considering he's never really communicated verbally. This one really showed us how far that those skills have developed. When Donnie meets the jaguar for the first time, its demeanor terrifies him. It acts rather threatening towards him. He realizes very quickly though that the jaguar is the girl's mother, however, by picking up on the mannerisms and body language. And he also picked up pretty quickly that they didn't trust him at all until she vouched for him. We saw it firsthand. The mother roared and Donnie's new friend talked her down. From there, the moment that her guard went down and her energy made a big shift, Donnie immediately felt comfortable playing and getting close to her, even though literally seconds before, that jaguar was threatening him. This right here, again, is a tremendous statement to Donnie's adaptability as well. His ability to immediately recognize social dynamics shows that even though his language is lacking, he's still extremely emotionally intelligent. On the note of that emotional intelligence, however, we have to touch on that scene where Donnie saw her grooming herself after he headbutted her into the mud puddle. When he sees her doing that, he takes it upon himself to come up and help her. Now, this right here really had my gears turning for a multitude of pretty deep reasons. First of all, watching this one and now having the knowledge that Donnie was raised by orangutans, it's clear as day that this is a sign of affection on his behalf. Not in like a weird way at all whatsoever, but in a sense that orangutans partake in communal grooming. That was him basically saying, hey, I'm sorry I got you dirty, let me help you get clean. When it comes to orangutans, it's normally in the form of like picking bugs or debris from their hair. In this one though, it's a lot different. Considering the girl is raised by jaguars, she has a tendency to clean herself the way that they do, by licking herself clean. Now, one thing we know about Donnie is that for him, mirroring someone's mannerisms is a way for him to say that he likes them. It's a very specific to him way for him to show you that you are somebody that means something to him, especially when you keep in mind that we rarely see him mimicking people that he doesn't like. In some ways, it helps him learn how the world works and it scratches his natural itch for curiosity, but it's also something that he reserves for those that he sees as important to him. It's kind of like him saying, hey, I like you and I want to be like you. Peeling this one back a little further though, it really did highlight the difference between these feral children in a very valuable way. They might both be wild and raised by nature, but they're certainly each cut from a vastly different cloth. Each of them were raised differently. Donnie, living with orangutans, wasn't really raised with a sense of personal space. He's used to communal grooming, and even outside of that, in the context of his life with the Thornberrys, he's used to being given a bath by his family. It's one of the ways that they take care of him, which in and of itself is a show of love and affection. However, this little feral girl on the other hand, she's essentially a cat. She's used to grooming herself on her own time, and that not really being something that anybody else participates in. Of course, that highlights a massive difference in instincts, and it comes directly as a result of being raised by different animals. It's like how different families have different approaches to things and different family values. It doesn't really matter to her that Donnie has good intentions or that he means well. She still has her personal space that she values over Donnie's desire to be kind to her. In the long run though, the most subtly heartbreaking piece of this whole puzzle had to have been when Debbie showed up to take Donnie home. At this point, Donnie is full-blown sleeping through the night with this pack of jaguars, seemingly having accepted his role there. When Debbie shows up to remind him of where he came from though, his pause at her trying to bring him back genuinely says everything. That tiny, minuscule moment of silence really does speak volumes. Donnie actually considers staying. For him, this girl is essentially his first and only true peer, and potentially his first love. He's bonded so deeply with her in such a short time because this moment was the very first time that Donnie felt understood on a primal level. As much as Eliza tries to empathize and does everything that she can for Donnie, she can never truly understand him because she doesn't know what it's like to be him. She doesn't know what it's like to have all these thoughts in your head without an avenue to let them all come out for others to hear. And for Donnie, this isn't just some kind of puppy love. This isn't some girl that he found pretty. This is recognition in a way that he has never gotten to experience before. He sees himself in her. There's no words needed because their shared experience does the talking for them in a way that none of us can really relate to. Their bond is built entirely on instinct and gestures. Something that's essentially a lot deeper than normal human communication. It's the kind of connection that in this day and age you could never find on a dating app. These two share so much. Almost everything except for their upbringing. Yet they're different in so many intriguing ways. I mean, they're both feral, but whereas she's quiet and a little more graceful, Donnie is loud and chaotic. Whereas she prefers some solitude in ways, Donnie is very communal. Of course, this certainly leads us all to contemplate not only what Donnie would have been like if he had remained in the jungle, but what if he was raised by different animals other than orangutans? And it goes without saying that the curiosity here stems from how being raised by different animals has affected these two so differently. Furthermore, it also leads us to wondering if Donnie had stayed, could it have even worked out? Could a boy raised by orangutans and attempted to be domesticated by humans thrive living among jaguars like this little girl does? As the dominoes fall though, this one really comes down to showing just how deep of a character that Donnie is in the way that he is capable of love, heartbreak, and letting go. All of this is absolutely projected in Donnie's choice. He isn't tricked, he isn't yanked away by Debbie. He actively chooses to leave. He makes that choice because deep down he knows that he belongs with their family now. However, that doesn't negate the fact that it was absolutely a hard choice for him to make. It's one that he has to make, feeling like it's accompanied by a sense of loss in a way. Now, one thing that really needs to be said about this episode is how haunting that Debbie's final decision was. She takes Donnie back home, confident that she has picture proof of this girl existing. However, when she realizes that the picture is gone, she decides instead to just not say anything. She doesn't tell anybody that there's another feral child out there like Donnie. She actively just chooses not to interfere. Now, this right here raises a plethora of ethical questions. I mean, should she have at least tried to help her? Would helping her be the right thing to do? Like, Donnie technically came to them when he was a baby, though he was pushed by his orangutan mother. If Debbie had tried to help, would that even be considered help at this point? Or would it be like some kind of twisted colonialism, considering that this girl isn't really asking for help like Donnie seemingly was when he approached them? On one hand, the fact that Debbie didn't say anything about the little girl is slightly alarming. However, it does come with the message that not everyone is meant to be brought back to civilization. Sometimes that can be to the detriment of the person in question. One truly mind-blowing portrayal of this, which may have been easily overlooked, is how this is actually shown in the main story surrounding Eliza and the giant tortoises. Despite her love of animals and her willingness to help, Eliza truly doesn't understand what she's doing. She's literally projecting human social norms onto animals. Of course, as well-intentioned as her actions are here, they were actively sticking a tree branch in the bike tire of this whole natural process. With that in mind, I certainly want to point out that Eliza's misunderstanding of tortoise courtship is a metaphor for how people misread wild behavior through a domestic lens. Her mistake in perceiving the tortoise's natural mating ritual for a violent interaction is reflective of a broader human tendency. The tendency to interpret behaviors based on what we recognize from human, domesticated, or civilized norms, even if those norms don't really apply to the situation whatsoever. Just like how Eliza made assumptions of the tortoise wanting to growl and bite its mate's neck, people have a tendency to make the assumption that loud or chaotic behavior automatically equates to bad behavior. Nonverbal communication immediately points to a lack of intelligence, or that a sense of wildness is something that needs to be tamed or corrected. In every sense, Donnie himself is the living embodiment of that misunderstanding. He's constantly perceived as erratic or in need of being managed. He's sometimes treated like a pet rather than a complex individual. And he's often viewed from a lens of civilized norms, which can lead to well-meaning behaviors being misinterpreted. As far as Eliza goes, she projects her understanding of human relationships onto tortoises, just like how society projects its ideas of normalcy onto those who behave differently. As a result, she disrupts a natural and healthy process, endangering the species she cares about even further. Essentially, the real irony is that even though she can talk to animals, she still gets it wrong. Her gift, by default, doesn't make her wise. This metaphor, though, directly showcases how Donnie's experience is often misread. As it pertains to him, his behavior, which is shaped by a traumatic upbringing and a life in the wild, can't be interpreted using typical childhood development benchmarks. Now, relating the tortoise situation with Eliza to the situation with Debbie, Donnie, and the feral little girl, though, would absolutely prove to paint things differently. In contrast to Eliza overstepping with the tortoises and inserting herself into the situation, Debbie doesn't really try to take the feral girl home. She doesn't take it upon herself to make this girl her responsibility. She simply acknowledges her existence and lets her be. That right there showcases that while Eliza tries to do too much, Debbie knows when it's the right time to do absolutely nothing. The big point of this episode was that nature thrives when it's left alone. The tortoises only succeed when they were left to follow their instincts without any further intervention. Meanwhile, the feral girl isn't saved. She isn't domesticated or attempted to be civilized. She doesn't want to be saved. She's seen by Debbie and just simply left alone. As contradictory as it may feel to us humans, the big revelation within this episode is that not everything wild is broken. Not everything outside of society is lost. Not everything that operates outside of the realm of your understanding is imperceivable. As a character, Donnie Thornberry is one that at a glance is just pure chaos. He's rapid movement and unintelligible babbling in the form of comedic relief. So many of us saw him as just the funny feral kid who would oftentimes serve as the punchline. When you truly look past that babbling, the wild hair, and the animal mannerisms, you'll see that Donnie is without a doubt one of the most quietly profound characters in all of Nicktoons history. He's a complex symbolization for the fact that nothing in life is as simple as we ever want it to be. It's never black and white. He isn't just wild or tame. He's not either traumatized or thriving. He's both. He's proof that two things can be true at the same time. The beauty of his character is that he completely defies all sense of easy categorization. He's the cartoon embodiment of the sentiment that humans, like nature itself, isn't meant to be locked into binaries. He's a kid with a painful past, an unconventional present, and a truly uncertain future. At the end of it all, though, that doesn't make him broken or define him as a person. It makes him a more real character, one that people can truly relate to, even if they don't realize it. He's a symbol for how complex the human condition really is, even in its most primal state. In a world that constantly tries to put you in a box, Donnie refuses the box. He thrives outside of it, and without a doubt, that's one beautifully human facet of his existence. He shows us that there can be meaning in messiness, and that survival doesn't always look neat and tidy. Identity doesn't inherently follow a linear path, and being different, without a doubt, doesn't mean being wrong. It means that you're human, and you are just as valid as anybody else. At the end of it all, Donnie Thornberry may not speak a single intelligible word, but if you truly listen with more than just your ears, he has a lot to say. But I can't believe I'm asking you guys this so many hours later. What do you guys think? Did these last few hours completely change your outlook on Donnie as a character? Let me know in the comments down below. I always love seeing your guys' feedback. Of course, I have to use the last little bit of my voice that I have left to take a brief moment to give a humongous shout out to my friends in the true 90s Kids tier between Patreon and YouTube memberships. Your guys' support is why I get to spend weeks on end working on videos like this one, and I truly appreciate you caring enough to help me do what I love to do. Thank you so much to all of my patrons and members. If you enjoyed this video, do me a huge solid and drop a like, and consider sticking around for another nostalgic walk down memory lane. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next one. Peace.